Hey guys, welcome to Saiyan Saga. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Goku had an older brother Raditz? Before starting, if you're a true Dragon Ball fan, don't miss out, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Your support helps bring this alternate DBZ universe to life. Let's power up together. This story is by SakanadeSuigetsu. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. Going to go fishing, big bro. Raditz tilted his head up, only to catch the bobbing tail of his little brother exit the door to their grandfather's house. The elder brother sighed, shaking his head slightly. Okay. Just don't stay out too late today, okay? You still need to help with chores, Raditz called out, moving to the window. Goku was already down the pathway, but Raditz was sure that he probably heard at least part of this. Raditz shook his head, then turned to the memorial proudly displayed at the entrance to their home. He walked over with a rag to remove any dust that may have settled, taking extra time to clean the bright orange ball that lay in the center. Good morning, Gramps Gohan, the older boy spoke, closing his eyes. Their grandfather had been gone for 2 years at this point. Goku had a way to be good-spirited about just about anything, and practically treated the shrine like a second grandfather. Raditz had a little more difficulty doing so when thinking back to the events that surrounded Gohan's passing. Despite this, he still had his habits. Raditz set the rag down, turning to leave their home. I'm going to go get firewood. Don't wait up, raising a hand before leaving their home. All things considered, it was a quiet day. The animals occasionally made sounds, but the forest itself was still. As Raditz placed another piece of firewood into its satchel, a sharp noise cut through the air. That noise was followed by multiple, rapid, blasts. Please don't let this be Goku related, Raditz murmured to himself, still dropping his firewood satchel and rushing towards the source of the noises. As he approached the source of the noise, Goku's voice filled the silent forest. Wait, you're a girl? Of course I'm a girl, haven't you ever seen one before? Raditz blinked, looking ahead. His little brother was standing on a strange vehicle as a girl around his age focused her attention on Goku. No, actually, he hasn't. He's been sort of sheltered his whole life. Big bro. Goku called out, running towards Raditz and jumping on his shoulder. Bulma's eyes followed and laid solidly on the muscled figure in front of her. While one part of her brain was still dedicated to focusing on the Dragon Ball radar, there wasn't any harm in talking up the hunk in front of her. Before Raditz could even blink, Bulma was wrapped around his arm, her hands feeling up his arm muscles. You're his big brother, my name's Bulma. I just happened to run into your little brother a moment ago while I was looking for a little help. Bulma practically sang her spoken words, looking up to the other teenager with slightly lidded eyes. She shot me and ran in on that monster over there, Goku stated, unbothered. Bulma began to stutter as Raditz raised an eyebrow towards the teen girl. With a gentle shrug of his arm, he detached the woman and started to walk in the opposite direction, Goku in tow. Wait. Where are you going? Bulma called out. We are going home. Where you end up going depends on you, Raditz stated firmly, only to feel his younger brother hop back on the ground. But, Raditz, Goku tugged at his older brother's GI. Grandpa Gohan always said that if I were to meet a lady, that I had to treat her nice. Goku. She shot you. More than once. Raditz, Goku shook his head, turning to look back at Bulma. It's the right thing to do. Grandpa said so. Raditz looked back up towards the purple-haired woman, who in response nervously waved back towards the other teen. Then Raditz looked at Goku. Goku always seemed to take whatever Gohan taught them to heart, even when it was about situations that may not have called for it. Fine. Sure. It looks like Goku caught a fish. Have a bite to eat and then be on your way wherever. You're too kind, Bulma called out, rushing to catch up. The little one is strong and his big brother is hot, but also sort of scary. Still, they could be useful. Bulma thought with a sly smile crossing her face when Raditz turned the other direction. Gramps, we're home. Grandpa, look, we brought a girl home. Bulma glanced around the small living space that the two brothers shared, only for her eyes to stop on the Dragon Ball sitting front and center at the entrance. Wait. I knew my radar wasn't off. Bulma's hand extended to grab the orb, only to be grasped in a firm hand. That's one of the only surviving possessions from our late grandfather, if you don't mind. Raditz spoke as he spun the girl in the opposite direction. Yeah, don't touch Grandpa. Even if you're a girl you're not allowed to. Bulma sighed, looking at the two. Well, I guess I'll have to let you in on what I've been hiding. Bulma opened her satchel and produced 2 more Dragon Balls. There are more of them, 2 more Grandpas, Goku called out, looking back and forth between the orbs in Bulma's hands and the one sitting on their grandfather's shrine. They're called Dragon Balls. There are 7 of them total according to legend. Collect them all and then the dragon god Shenron will grant you a wish. That's at least how the story goes. Bulma hummed, her eyes still going back to the Dragon Ball sitting in front of her. That's why I really need that Dragon Ball, so I can make my wish for a super perfect boyfriend, unless someone wants to volunteer. Raditz rolled his eyes, standing in front of the shrine as Goku puffed his chest out. No way. He's our only grandpa that we have left now, so you can't take him. Come on, I'm sure there's something I could do to convince you otherwise, Bulma huffed, only for Raditz to notice the look she was getting in her eyes again. Slowly, the woman started to lift up her skirt, giving the elder brother a lidded look. How about just a quick little look? I think that's more than fair. No one wants to see your dirty butt, Raditz and Goku said in unison, Goku a bit more amused while Raditz rolled his eyes again. It's not dirty, Bulma hissed back, trying to think quickly. The older brother wasn't going to budge as easy so her eyes settled on the young Goku instead. Your grandpa told you to be nice to girls, right? Then help me do this. You're still not taking my grandpa, fine, I'll just borrow it then, promise, just help, Bulma yelled back. No way. Okay. Raditz practically fell down, quickly looking down at his little brother. What do you mean, okay? Goku looked back up at his brother, tilting his head to the side. Raditz, Grandpa Gohan said that it was important to help girls, remember? Grandpa also said that he was friends with a lot of brunette women, Raditz responded. Goku blinked slowly, not understanding why their grandfather was so fond of making sure that the brothers grew up being kind to women. As Goku looked up at his older brother, Raditz sighed, knowing that Goku had already made up his mind about this situation. Raditz looked back to Bulma before glancing back to the Dragon Ball on the shrine. Fine, we'll help you out. I'm the one carrying around the Dragon Ball though. That's totally fine by me. Bulma cheered internally, knowing that ultimately this debacle wouldn't matter when the Dragon Balls scattered across the world after her wish. Let's get going, okay. Bulma looked through her bag and pulled out a capsule, throwing it on the ground. The capsule turned into a small car with enough seating for 3 people. How did you do that? Are you a witch? Goku asked bewildered. Most be some sort of witch I reckon, Raditz added, tapping the car with his foot. Seriously? Capsules are all the rage in the city. Just get in so we can leave already. She sighed, hopping in the driver's seat. By the way, what are your names? I'm Son Goku, and that's my big brother Raditz. Grandpa used to call him Daikun cuz it sounded like daikon radish. Raditz flustered slightly, sending a quick glare at Bulma's direction as she snorted at his name. Raditz is the only name I remember having. Got something to say about it? What's your name anyway? Come on, no need to be so defensive all the time. My name is Bulma. That means bloomers. Goku spouted as Raditz laughed faster than Bulma ever did. Shut up. I didn't pick this name, Dragon Balls? Raditz paused again, turning his head as his stomach turned at the thought. Bulma, it really doesn't matter. No really. Oh, once a year sounds like a long time, but it really isn't. I'm sure that the dragon has enough power to do 2 wishes back to back. Raditz sighed, glancing back over to the girl next to him. While he did still think she was at least a little bit vain, he could see that she was trying. I just want to try and wish for our grandpa to come back. Goku really misses him and he hesitated. I really wish that I could tell him a few things. I don't know, like I said. Don't worry too much about it. Bulma sat quietly with Raditz for a while, grappling with her clashing thoughts. Of course she'd be the one to come across an orphaned pair of kids who seemed good-hearted enough. A perfect boyfriend compared to wanting one's family member to come back to life was just silly sounding when you mentioned it out loud. Not to mention the sinking feeling she got implying second wishes, knowing that the Dragon Balls would disappear for 1 year. Geez. See, this is why I said it wasn't any big deal. Raditz shook his head. I'll figure something out. Just focus on trying to find a boyfriend or something. Bulma was about to open her mouth, only closing it when she looked at the other boy's expression. It was a lot softer than what she would have expected, especially after dealing with him all day. It seemed a little familiar, like it was a smile aimed towards a younger sibling to let them know that something was okay. Just try and get some rest, Radish boy. We have a big day ahead of us. Raditz laid sprawled out on the floor, wrapped in the blankets. For what it was worth, the floors of the capsule home were fairly comfortable. Everything was calm in the morning until he heard the sound of his brother screaming. Raditz bolted up, just as he saw Bulma running towards her satchel. Goku. Don't scare me like that. The Dragon Balls are fine. She turned her head quickly to Raditz. You still have your grandpa's Dragon Ball, right? Raditz quickly patted his GI pocket, pulling out the orb. Yeah. Why? What happened? Is Goku okay? Bulma sighed in relief, zipping her satchel closed again. He must have had a nightmare. A nightmare? Goku doesn't usually have night terrors like that. Raditz moved to try and see where his brother was. Goku was in the corner, murmuring something about balls and being gone. Despite trying to coax an answer out of him, the older teens were left at a loss at what could have scared Goku that much. Goku sat back, kicking his feet back and forth. Despite having trouble remembering the numbers on the clock sometimes, he was sure that quite some time had passed this morning. Staying in one place for long periods of time was always difficult to do, especially when they were supposed to be looking for the Dragon Balls. Goku thought that with the urgency Bulma was talking about them yesterday, she would be the first one out the door. A pout formed on the boy's face as he looked at the sight in front of him. Bulma was sitting at a stand with a mirror, doing weird things to her face. Meanwhile, Raditz was off to the side, still brushing his long hair. When Raditz started to get fussy about his hair when Goku was 7, he had just assumed his brother was getting sort of weird. He didn't realize that this was just a teenager thing. Man, I hope I don't become a teenager. Goku, I'm almost done, promise. You know my hair is longer than yours. Raditz sighed, watching his brother fidget. It's just hair, it's gonna get dirty again anyway. That's why I take care of it to keep it from getting messy. Raditz watched his brother shift back and forth, feeling slightly guilty as he finished one section. Goku, it's only natural for grown people to spend more time making themselves look presentable. Little kids just don't get it, Bulma hummed. Gee, I hope I never do then. Goku shook his head, still baffled at the idea. Goku, why don't you run around outside for a bit? Get your blood pumping? Raditz suggested. As it turns out, Raditz didn't even need to finish that sentence for Goku to be out the door. All right. I'll be back in soon. Bulma watched the younger boy run out, slightly happy for a moment of quiet. Only for a moment, then her focus settled on the other teenager. If you're worried about your hair getting messy, you should let me braid it. She hummed, already moving closer to the other teenager. Braid? I think Gramps tried to before, but then it got knotted up. Raditz shuddered, remembering the aftermath of entangling his jungle of hair for who knows how long at the age of 8. Do I look like an old man? That's why I said you should let me do it, she said, turning Raditz to face the opposite way. Hey, just stay still. It'll probably work out better for traveling anyway. If it bugs you so much you can undo it later. Raditz did have to admit that Bulma was better at braiding hair than Grandpa Gohan ever was. His head didn't feel like it was being pulled to pieces, and everything, for the most part, was in place along his back. Bulma stood back to admire her handiwork, setting the brush and collections of bands to the side. Your guy's hair is a lot thicker than it looks. But, like I said, even if it's just one braid, I'm pretty amazing at these sort of things. I guess so. We should really check on my brother though. It's only been 30 minutes, what sort of trouble could he have? The moment Bulma opened the door, she was face to face with Goku and a giant sea turtle on his back. Guys, look what I found, Goku yelled proudly, setting the turtle down. Raditz and Bulma stared at the turtle, Raditz looking at the flippers on the turtle curiously. Turtles don't look like this where we're from. He doesn't have any toes. Probably because he's a sea turtle, Bulma commented, watching the turtle approach. Turtle watched the others before finally speaking up. I hate to trouble you all, but could I trouble you for a drink of salt water and a touch of seaweed? With some back and forth, and an attempt of turtle napping by a bear bandit, the trio found themselves leading Turtle back to his home. Goku was still proud of himself for landing a solid punch on the bandit, though he was not curious about what turtle soup tasted like. Bulma, still not used to watching Goku fight, still was dazed as they approached the beach. Gramps Gohan did his best to teach Goku and me martial arts. Raditz commented fondly, still thinking about the last punch Goku landed. Still. That isn't natural for a boy his age. What can I say, he's the toughest kid I know. Anyway, turtle guy, you close to home yet? Yes. Here. Wait here for a moment if you would. I'd like to reward the little one for his help. The turtle called out as he started to swim forward. Bulma sighed, watching the turtle swim through the ocean. If I knew we were going to be at the beach, I would have brought my swimsuit. Blah. Bulma slowly turned around, only to see both brothers making a face as they leaned over, cupping seawater in their hands. Don't drink ocean water, you dorks. I didn't know there was salt in it, Raditz hissed. Yeah, someone must have come in and poured a bunch in the water, Goku added. As the three bickered about the justification of drinking salt water, through the horizon the figure of an elderly man riding on the back of a turtle moved closer into their line of sight. Raditz stood back, watching the older man through careful, yet intrigued eyes. On the one hand, this was the second new person he was meeting in the past 2 days. That's double the amount of people he usually interacts with in 1 year. Despite this, something about him seemed familiar, though he couldn't specifically place it. Raditz, look, I'm riding a cloud. Goku called out, doing tricks and flips. Raditz gave a thumbs up, smiling up towards his brother. Just don't go out too far, we're going to leave soon. As Goku continued to do his tricks, Raditz turned his head towards another scene taking place. Of course Bulma wants something too, he shook his head, taking one step closer. He wasn't really sure what type of conversation was taking place, but there was an uneasy feeling to what he felt may happen next. Before he could get any closer, in a flash there was a lifting of a nightgown and things were seen that should have remained private. Raditz stood there stunned and at a loss for words. Bulma seemed happy enough, heaven knows why. The only thing that knocked sense back into him was Goku landing. Goku. Raditz. We got another Dragon Ball, Bulma exclaimed, handing the ball to Goku to look at. This must have been the one the radar was picking up. Thanks so much, old-timer. Did I say anything about giving it to you? Roshi spoke, clearly thinking about the monetary value of the 3-star ball if it's valuable. Raditz's eyes worked fast, seeing that Bulma's hands were again moving closer to the hem of her nightgown. Faster than he had ever moved before, his hand met the top of Bulma's arms like a safety barrier and his eyes locked with the turtle hermit. Oi, Gramps. I think you got exactly what you wanted a moment ago. Roshi thought about it, then considered the luck he ran into already. Relenting, Bulma was able to keep the Dragon Ball. As Roshi left, Bulma still quickly put the Dragon Ball in her satchel while Goku cheered. See, wasn't it a good idea that we helped the turtle? It was just dumb luck is all, Bulma exclaimed, still excited from her venture. You're too bold, Raditz murmured, his eyes avoiding the other teen. Relax, I've done worse. Raditz watched her get on her motorcycle, then shivered. Goku tilted his head, unaware of what transpired. Hey Raditz, you wanna ride on my cloud with me? I've gotten pretty good. Sure thing, buddy. The mood remained light, until the trio returned to their capsule pod, where Bulma realized the actual truth of her barter with the turtle pervert. Raditz learned that Bulma at least wouldn't go that far on purpose. Goku learned that the next time he touched a girl's underwear that Bulma would shoot to kill. Despite the luck of finding 2 Dragon Balls within about 2 days of each other, the next Dragon Ball was proving slightly harder to locate. Bulma's impatience grew with each passing day only being another reminder of her summer break. Goku and Raditz enjoyed the changing scenery, taking in the view whenever they had to stop for anything. Will you two take this seriously? I have less than a month to find the rest of the Dragon Balls and we're currently in a rough patch. I'm not the one who made a fancy radar that says where they are. Besides, we'll find another one soon. You just need to take these things one day at a time, ya know? Raditz hummed, watching the scenery. Bulma scowled, only for a moment later for her Dragon Ball radar to indicate that the presence of a Dragon Ball was getting stronger. She chose not to dignify this with a response as Raditz proceeded with the "I told you so" smile. Raditz, Are towns supposed to be all empty like this? Goku asked, walking beside his older brother. I don't think so. I would have figured that there would be at least a few people outside at the very least. Raditz's eyes scanned the area as well. Do you think they went somewhere? Bulma asked, staying close to the opposite side of Raditz. Nah, they're still here. I can sense them. They must all be inside. Don't worry. I can check this out. Goku exclaimed, moving forward to a closed door. The smaller boy knocked on the door, garnering no response. Okay. Just remember we've been working on. Before Raditz could finish his sentence, his younger brother had punched a hole in the door to open it from the outside. Manners. Manners, Goku. What's manners have to do with? Goku turned around to look at the pair, when suddenly a figure charged from the darkness. Goku turned back around to look, only to be hit on the bed with the sharp end of a wood axe. Luckily, this weapon did nothing to the young boy. If anything, he did more damage to the axe head, but it still wasn't the most pleasant feeling. Raditz quickly stepped forward, standing in front of his younger brother and swiping the axe handle, quickly using it as a makeshift staff. It didn't work. The man stammered as Goku still murmured in the background. What did you do that for? The younger brother cried out in frustration. Talk. You got 5 seconds. Raditz's eyes narrowed. The man who struck Goku immediately fell to his knees as if he was praying. Please Lord Oolong, I'll give you anything. Just spare my daughter. As the man spoke, a young girl poked her head out from behind a covering. The trio paused, Raditz tossing the handle to the side after a moment. Lord Oolong? Goku sat on the ground, getting his head tended to by the young girl who was hiding in the home. Raditz still stood close to his brother, giving the man who struck his brother dirty looks as Bulma began speaking to him. Sorry about that. I thought Lord Oolong had taken a young boy's form as another trick to try and steal my daughter. The man stuttered out. You know, if you would have done that to me, I would have been dead, Bulma replied. Raditz kept his eyes on the man, unintentionally leading to a problem when he heard his brother speak. Oh, you're a girl too. Goku beamed, happy that he was figuring people out. Raditz immediately picked up his younger brother, sweating slightly. Goku no. Know what? Goku tilted his head. Well, you know, Raditz felt like he was at a loss for words. He thought he had everything down to being a big brother, but being a big brother was easier when you were two of only 3 people in the world. Luckily, he didn't have to try and explain as Bulma quickly took over in that department. No, pat. Bulma turned back to the people of the village, clearing her voice. Now, who's this Oolong guy that everyone is freaked out about? As the villagers described the Demon King Oolong, Raditz felt his blood boil slightly. Despite his own sibling being a boy, he still looked down at Goku. He couldn't imagine some creep coming in and taking his little brother. Especially, taking into consideration some of the company that they had already encountered on their journey. Raditz's silent anger grew. Even if this man just hit his brother in the head, he understood wanting to take care of family. And, if someone were to defeat this guy? Raditz asked, looking outside. Look guy. Your brother may be able to take a good hit, but I'm not sure anyone can defeat Lord Oolong. Bulma heard the people's concerns, though she also looked to his Dragon Ball radar again. The signal was stronger than ever. Wait, has anyone ever seen one of these before? She retrieved one of the Dragon Balls, presenting it to the man. While the man hadn't seen it, one of the older women in the village happened to be in possession of the 6-star Dragon Ball. Luckily you haven't met a kid like Goku before. If we get rid of Oolong, how about you give us the Dragon Ball in return? Bulma offered, proudly pointing down to where Goku had previously been standing. The boy was no longer there, already moving towards the older woman. Raditz sensed where this was going, trying to grab his brother to no avail. We said no, pat. This is ridiculous. Why don't we just go out and get that guy? Raditz sat inside the home, glaring out the window as he saw Goku waiting as bait. His younger brother was dressed as the girl Oolong was planning on kidnapping. Goku is a strong kid, and if he's able to play along then we'll know what Oolong did with the rest of the girls. Bulma explained again. Besides, you're a little too tall to pretend to be a little village girl. Raditz sent her a glare before his eyes quickly darted back to the window. Walking up the path was a large creature with horns, sharp teeth, a snout, and a bouquet of flowers. As this creature began speaking to his brother, Raditz clenched his fist. Calm down, it's fine. See, Goku is even acting along. Who knew he could get so into the role? He's not acting, he has to pee. Raditz replied, watching his brother shift back and forth. Soon, the figure in front of them turned into a handsome man. Raditz's ire did not change, and as he was about to mention it to Bulma, the door opened. Bulma was already outside, now attempting to flirt with the Demon King known as Oolong. I swear, it's like being in a crazy town. He grit his teeth, trying to stay back and follow the plan. Follow right behind as Goku gets taken to the lair. Follow right behind as Goku gets taken to his lair. As Raditz was finishing his thought, Goku finally responded to nature, causing Oolong to realize that the girl in fact was a boy. The ground started to shake as the Demon King Oolong began transforming into the shape of an ox. Bulma quickly hurried back inside as the Oolong turned his rage to Goku. I hate when I do that with attractive boys. New plan. We need to beat him up without killing him, Raditz. He's already outside. Ms. 34C. Oolong in ox form glared down at Goku as the younger boy retrieved his staff. The bull snorted, before growling out. You think that you can? Knock me out, little boy? Goku smirked, almost responding only to notice movement approaching. Oh geez, now you've really done it. Why'd you have to go and upset my brother like that? Suddenly Oolong realized his head couldn't turn to the side. Gripping his horn was Raditz, glaring down harshly. The only reason you haven't been cooked at this point is because you know where those girls are, so spill it. His voice was fierce and serious. Oolong paled, trying to devise an escape plan as he looked at the clock. He didn't have much time before he had to turn back into his true form, but it was just enough time to take the form of a bat and make an escape. It was better than being served up as dinner. Ah, Goku, he's getting away. I'll catch him. Try and keep up. Goku hopped on his cloud to fly towards the pig as Raditz followed by foot. Raditz watched above as the two looped in flight patterns, Oolong trying to avoid the other before the great Demon King turned into the form of a pig in a Maoist uniform. Goku quickly grabbed the pig before he fell. Oolong thought against transforming and running away as he led the townsfolk to the location of the girls. Goku said he would squish him if that happened, which he believed, but Raditz still looked at the piglet like pork would be on the menu tonight. If he tried anything else. Regardless, the girls were safe, although a bit spoiled. How the pig ended up in the same car as the other travelers is what Raditz and Oolong questioned more. Having a shapeshifter will be helpful. Besides, if you don't help, my muscly friend here might not be too happy. Don't treat me like the muscle. Raditz, how come girls are so weird? Raditz at this point had Goku on his shoulder again, occasionally turning his head to Bulma whining and trailing further and further behind by the minute. The only one keeping pace with the girl was the shapeshifter pig they had found recently. She says it's 'cause she's a city person and isn't used to having to rough it out in the wilderness. After all, the pig is doing it too. Raditz hummed. No fair. How come you're carrying Goku? Why don't you be a gentleman and carry the lady for a second, huh? Bulma called out. Raditz rolled his eyes, waiting for the other two to catch up again. Goku can walk long distances no problem. I just like hanging out with him. Besides, it's good for you to get exercise, apparently. Yeah, Raditz gets lonely if I'm not around and it would be funny looking if he rode on my shoulder, Goku commented. Bulma grit her teeth, too frustrated to comment back. An entire capsule pouch gone and not even a handsome boy there who would be willing to give her a hand. I swear, the next time I get a new thing of capsules, you two are sleeping outside, she panted under her breath. Goku hummed, watching the scenery change from a more jungle environment to that of a desert mountain range. Do you think Grandpa ever came out this way before? Raditz nodded, appreciating the changes in landscaping. Probably. Gramps went all over when he was younger. By the time he got us, I just think he was happy about where he lived. Yeah, when we're done, we'll probably have some chores to do, especially if the monster comes by this month. Goku chirped. A sinking feeling in Raditz's gut began to form. His brother still looked so happy, Raditz couldn't bring himself to mention what really happened to their grandfather 2 years ago. Part of him didn't want Goku to blame himself over something he couldn't control. Another part of Raditz felt guilt, believing that he could have done something to stop their grandfather's passing. Raditz couldn't dwell on the matter much longer, hearing a collapsing noise from behind them. The teen girl who had been so adamant on finding the Dragon Balls as soon as possible had passed out on the ground. He rolled his eyes, letting Goku hop down in order to pick up Bulma. Here. I'm going to look through her pack to see if she has anything useful to cool her down. Why do you get to? Oolong started, only to get the sharp glare from the elder son brother. Keep talking, and we will be having pork for dinner, he said curtly, only to turn his head to Goku. Goku, you're in charge of looking for food. All right. Goku gave a thumbs up, hurrying with Oolong in tow. Raditz sat Bulma under the shade, looking through her backpack with a sigh. Most of it was little things he didn't find useful. He knew most of her equipment relied on capsules, so her actual stock of items was minimal at best. Raditz resorted to his own little knapsack, getting a water skin. He splashed water on the teen girl's face, her eyes fluttering open. Huh, are we still outside? Yeah. Goku and the pig went out to try and find food. You passed out. Raditz handed her the water skin. It's not a lot, and we probably want to save it, but water is water. Bulma took a drink, still wincing at the soreness her legs felt. The city and outdoors were really two different beasts. She handed the water skin back to Raditz, appreciating the stillness of being able to sit down. We shouldn't be that far from civilization, hypothetically, Raditz thought aloud. We're still too far away by foot, we'd have to hope for some sort of miracle, she whined. Bulma, relax. You'll be fine. Goku and I won't let you wither away. For a moment, Bulma had an appreciation for the older brother again. Despite everything, he was still looking out for anyone. Then she heard a loud growling noise originating from Raditz's stomach. So hungry. Didn't you eat earlier? Bulma exclaimed. I gave Goku half of my snack, Raditz murmured. With you carrying him all day, Goku is probably the only one in top shape, I swear. You might not remember her, but you were probably some sort of mama's boy. Raditz rolled his eyes, though something deep inside him figured that it was correct. He didn't know where, for he couldn't even remember anything before waking up and seeing his grandpa Gohan. Sometimes though, in the deepest part of his mind, he thought he remembered a kind womanly figure. Gentleness in a place where gentleness wasn't usually seen. A gentleness that he probably wasn't meant to mimic, if he wasn't raised by his grandfather. Bulma laid back on the ground, still exhausted as Raditz did the same. Raditz aimed to close his eyes just for a minute, but quickly that turned into straight-up falling asleep. This was supposed to be an easy raid. Yamcha gained a bit of distance between himself and the boy with the monkey tail. He knew the boy was evidently the grandson of the famous martial artist Gohan, but this amount of power coming from someone so small was still a shock. Goku grinned, twirling his bow staff again. You know, I know you said you were a bad guy, but this is pretty fun. Yamcha changed his stance for another attack. I have to admit, it's been a long time since I faced a real opponent. Goku and the desert bandit clashed, their fight bouncing them across the desert landscape. Yamcha tried to wear down Goku at every turn, but the amount of energy that the young boy had proved to be greater than expected. Finally, with a lucky strike of his wolf fang fist, Goku was thrown crashing through some desert rocks. The bandit turns to Oolong, holding his hand out for capsules and money. Be quick with it. Before he was able to finish those words, Goku had ran back with the speed of a torpedo, headbutting himself into the other teen's gut. Why you little? Yamcha gasped. Come on, don't give up now. Goku beamed, his tail swishing back and forth from excitement. Yamcha held his stance again, preparing for another attack. Slowly to the left of him, he noticed two figures sitting up. There was a beautiful girl, about his age, sitting up and staring at him. Yamcha felt his blood turn to ice, freezing in place. Slowly sitting up next to the girl was another teenage boy. While his blood was ice, there was a strong hint of jealousy, looking at the strong teenager. Puar. Help! Yamcha whispered, having to be saved by his cat companion. We'll be back for your capsules later. Yamcha yelled out, his voice cracking as he made some ground. Okay, thanks for the fight, mister, Goku called out, waving towards the bandit. Oolong sighed in relief, sending a quick glare to Goku. Don't encourage him to come back. No, please encourage him, Bulma chimed. Seriously, what's his name? He's a real hunk, she sighed happily. He was pretty cute, and it was nice of him to play with Goku like that. Bulma paused, her head turning to Raditz. Wait, what? What? And his little dorky stutter was cute too when he was running away. You're gay? Bulma gasped as Raditz turned his head to the other teen. Duh. Yamcha sat at his base, fuming over the defeat earlier by the hands of a kid, and being too scared to stick around due to the beautiful girl. Man, if I could stay around for even a second, I'd show her jerk boyfriend what's good for him. Master Yamcha, I know you can do it. Puar grabbed a blanket for his master, putting it around his shoulders. Goku laid on the floor of Oolong's capsule van, looking at the ceiling. At this point in the journey, he was finding himself having it up to here with the amount of teenager moments split between Bulma and his brother. The two had been snapping at each other for a while, over things that Goku personally couldn't understand. Oolong, I still don't get it. Why are they fighting over the one guy the first fought again? Hormones are a crazy thing, kid. What, and I'm supposed to pretend that he's not cute? You act weird about guys all the time and I can't even mention that one is cute? You agree with me? Raditz had his arms crossed, his tail flicking back and forth agitated. I didn't know I had competition. Bulma, you're being ridiculous. The girl crossed her arms again, turning her nose up towards the sky. I saw him first anyway, so I'm the one who gets to seduce him. Bulma, you can't claim a boy. Besides, he's the first cute boy I've ever seen in real life. What am I supposed to do? Lie? Who knows if he's even coming back? This desert is massive. The teen girl stopped to think, eventually sighing and looking back at the older boy. I just really want a boyfriend. I know you wouldn't do anything on purpose, though this also does explain why you didn't immediately fall to your knees when you met me. I think I didn't fall to my knees because you were loud and tried to get your way by being lewd. Bulma gave Raditz a look, still softer than she was a moment ago. I'm going to go take a shower. It's been a long day. You definitely need to take one after me though. Raditz rolled his eyes, going downstairs to grab some food. Are you and Bulma finished yelling at each other? Goku asked, already halfway through eating a whole turkey. Ah, sorry about that. We were just arguing about something. I don't get why you'd argue about a boy. Sure, he's a good fighter, but Bulma wouldn't even want to fight him? Raditz flushed slightly, letting out a sigh. You'll get it when you're older, maybe. If you don't, that's fine too. Raditz took a seat near his brother, piling his own plate with food. He was still exhausted from earlier, figuring he would hit the hay after taking a shower. Goku, noticing his brother's lethargic attitude towards food, offered his cake to the older boy. Raditz chucked, accepting the offer. Yamcha hid among the rocks, watching the van's inhabitants move around through his binoculars. He wasn't going to look foolish, especially after earlier. Grandson of Son Gohan or not, that kid isn't going to get the best of me. Lord Yamcha, just be careful. If the boy is that strong, what about the older boy? Puar, I know, that guy can't be that tough though. You saw him passed out, having to leave the dirty work to his little brother, just follow my plan. Raditz sighed, sitting in the laundry space with a towel around his waist. He wasn't as much of a stickler for cleaning his things as Bulma was, but he did know it was about time. He figured he might as well clean his GI now before he had to worry about it later. Raditz moved his GI to the dryer, stretching his muscles. Bulma always liked to take her time in the shower, so he figured by the time she finally got out, and he hopped in. Raditz approached the bathroom door, knocking quickly against the wooden frame. Hey, hurry it up. I want to go to sleep too at some point. I will. Geez, Raditz rolled his eyes, leaning against the wall. After a moment, the teen girl exited the bathroom with a towel wrapped around her waist and one around her head. The shower is all yours, baboon boy. Knock it off, will you? He sighed, entering the shower. Bulma went to the bedroom, looking for the promised pajamas. Her eyes narrowed, seeing that the pajamas Oolong promised were way too small for a human. As she walked downstairs, that's when she heard Goku telling Oolong all about the Dragon Balls. Goku, stop talking, she huffed, walking down the stairs. Oh, whoops. Sorry. And you? Her attention shifted to Oolong. You call these pajamas? They are my pajamas, thank you. Bulma shook her head, moving towards the laundry room. Did you at least start cleaning my things? You could put them in the wash yourself if you're so worried. Bulma shook her head, opening the dryer. Laying inside were a pair of GI pants and the shirt that the teen boy usually found himself wearing. She held the shirt up to her face, checking to see if the shirt was actually clean. When the smell test was clear, she slid the GI on, figuring it would do for now. Hey, that's my brother's stuff. Oh, relax, Goku. As soon as my things are finished I'll give it back. Besides, he's the one who would be glaring at the piglet over there because I'd be left without anything to wear and he'd be trying to perv on that. Guilty. As all Oolong could really say, disappointed that the fiction was not reality. Yamcha sat outside the kitchen window, listening to the conversation Goku and Oolong were having about the Dragon Balls. He couldn't believe his luck. An ability to forever get rid of his fear of women. If he was able to steal the Dragon Balls from this band of nitwits, he'd be able to fulfill his dream of getting married. Puar, this is our chance, we just have to wait for them to go to sleep and we'll be living the good life. Puar nodded, following his master alongside the caravan. Yamcha checked inside the windows as he passed by, memorizing the layout of the capsule home. There weren't too many rooms, he'd just have to make sure that he was quiet upon entry. Finally, Yamcha approached the last window. Raising his head, his eyes immediately set on a person in the bathroom. Long black hair trailed down the body of the person in the shower, soap suds running alongside the muscular lines trailing over the person's body. Raditz moved his hair out of his face, letting the warm water wash away any remaining soap suds. Yamcha quickly ducked down, not wanting to be seen by the other. Master Yamcha. Quiet, he cursed, holding Puar close to him. Raditz's ear twitched, his focusing changing to outside the window. After a moment he shrugged, going back to finishing his hair. Yamcha cursed to himself, happy that he wasn't caught. Man. It makes sense he's that girl's boyfriend. He's really strong looking, his hair is nice, his hips are really... Yamcha stopped himself, his eyes widening. He shook his head, crawling away from the window so he wouldn't be seen. I'm getting tired. We need to get in there soon. Puar just looked confused, watching his master think too hard about whatever he saw in the window. Bulma, come on. Raditz sighed, keeping the towel around his waist. A girl has to do what a girl has to do. The shirt is big on you, at least give me the pants back. Bulma gave the other a look, crossing her arms across her chest. No way, I don't want anyone looking at me when I'm asleep, and don't say I'm not being paranoid. Raditz sighed, knowing he wasn't going to win this argument. I'm taking the couch at least. I'm not cruel so you can have the blanket at least. Thank you, princess. Raditz grabbed the blanket, going to his spot to get comfy. Bulma made her way upstairs to sleep while Goku started to drift at his spot on the kitchen bench. Yamcha and Puar slowly entered through the front, seeing that Goku was asleep. There was still some movement in the caravan, indicating others were awake. Puar. Go upstairs and lure whoever's away outside. I'll take care of the kid. Puar nodded, turning into Goku. At least a somewhat accurate Goku. Yamcha patted his friend on the head, nodding his head towards the upstairs as he took Goku to the side. His eyes remained on the door, waiting for Puar to lure the others. He was only able to see one other person follow Puar Goku outside, the brother? I thought he was taller. Yamcha shook his head, setting Goku down. He snuck back inside, determined to find the Dragon Balls. He climbed the ladder, freezing when he saw the teen girl from earlier asleep on the bed. While a part of him froze as he did earlier, another part grew frustrated seeing her wearing the clothes of the other man. Who does he think he is, showing off? He murmured under his breath, going back downstairs. There weren't too many places that the Dragon Balls could be, not to mention virtually no money or capsules. The thief's eyes scanned the room, finally settling on a blanket sitting on top of the couch. What a simplistic hiding spot, Yamcha congratulated himself, moving towards the blanket on the couch. Yamcha's hand grabbed the blanket, quickly pulling it from the couch. What he was met with was the figure of the other man he had seen earlier. Raditz didn't notice the change in temperature, his breathing steady as before. Yamcha froze, staring for longer than he should have. His hand quickly dropped the blanket. Yamcha's brain was running faster than anything else about him, thinking of some thoughts he wasn't sure he agreed with. Finally, his legs made him bolt from the caravan, running in a straight direction as fast as he could. Puar could barely keep up with his master, hurrying to Yamcha's side the moment he had a chance. Yamcha, are you okay? What happened? I need to go lie down for a bit. What about the Dragon Balls? A bit. Puar, Out of all the people in the caravan, Raditz was the one asleep for the longest time. Bulma almost tried to wake him once or twice, worried something was wrong with the other teen. Each time, Goku would try and squash her worries. Don't worry, he does this sometimes. That doesn't really make me feel better. Why does he do this sometimes? Sometimes if me and Raditz are super hungry, we get really tired. He didn't eat a lot yesterday until late last night, so now he's busy sleeping until he's hungry again. Bulma sighed, adjusting the blanket so it was wrapped more comfortably around the other teenager. Raditz rolled slightly, holding the blanket closer to his body. Bulma was used to Raditz being up and about by this point. She did figure it was at least a little bit fair for him to be the one to have a turn sleeping in for once. Well, hopefully he's awake by the time we find the Dragon Ball in the Fry Pan Mountains. Bulma sighed, moving to the kitchen area to sit down. Anyway, Oolong, when are my clothes going to be finished? I told you, I spent most of the night guarding from that weirdo. You should have just sent him to my bed, she winked, ignoring the eye roll the other returned in her direction. Isn't that him? Goku asked, pointing out the driver's side window. With one blast, the caravan creaked to the side, just barely avoiding falling over. Bulma found herself falling to the side, knocking herself out cold. Raditz's sleeping body tumbled to the floor, narrowly avoiding hitting anything too dangerous. Goku immediately went to confront Yamcha, frustrated at the other's dangerous actions. Raditz adjusted himself after a moment, slowly sitting up from the floor. Looking around the caravan, books were scattered on the floor and Bulma was murmuring something about the hunk from the other day. From outside, Raditz's ears picked up the sounds of his younger brother fighting someone. Raditz took hold of the blanket that was covering him, stepping out of the caravan after a moment. As his eyes adjusted to the afternoon sunlight, he saw his brother engaging in hand-to-hand combat with the bandit from the day before. Goku's expression proved to be more serious than the previous day, as evident from the damage taken to the caravan. Raditz shook his head, his tail creeping out from the side to hold the blanket shut and allow his arms to be free. Hey, bandit guy, Raditz called out. Whatever's going on, you better quit right now. My little bro isn't afraid to whoop that pretty face of yours. Yamcha turned his head, his body freezing up similarly to the other night. Puar looked on in confusion. Yamcha only tended to do this when he was near women. Before the pair could think any more on the matter, Goku landed an especially nasty kick to the side of the bandit's face. Raditz winced, awkwardly clearing his voice. Like that I suppose. Lord Yamcha, your tooth, Puar cried out. Yamcha's eyes widened, quickly touching his face. Puar turned into a mirror, allowing the other to properly take a look at the damage done. My beautiful face. Raditz watched as the other boy patted the sand around him, trying to find his missing tooth. This isn't over, we'll be back. Yamcha yelled out again, his voice cracking as he and Puar made their escape. That was quick. Goku hummed, going over to his older brother. Why'd he stop fighting when he saw you? I dunno. Maybe I just distracted him. Where are we anyway? Lord Yamcha, I really am worried about you. I said it's nothing. Yamcha's voice cracked again, switching between looking at his face in the mirror and trying to make sense about what happened. They were supposed to be in the clear. The woman traveling with them had fainted, so it was just a matter of fighting the kid and the pig. Why'd I freeze up when the older brother came outside? Is it because of last night? Yamcha paused before rapidly shaking his head. Not like that. I mean, I must have gotten nervous or in my own head, yeah. That's it. I just freaked myself out is all. Lord Yamcha, what are we going to do about the Dragon Balls? Don't worry, I still have a plan, Raditz groaned, looking through the remains of the caravan. It definitely wasn't in any condition to move again. As expected, Bulma still hadn't gotten around to cleaning her clothes from the other day either. The only thing the perverted pig had as extra clothing was a perverted bunny outfit. As funny as Bulma may think it would be when she finally would wake, Raditz doubted that he could fit in the outfit, even if he wanted to wear the damn thing. The best compromise Raditz could consider was to convince Bulma to wear the tights from the bunny outfit and give him his pants back. While the older teen's tale was useful and did manage to fashion a blanket into a tunic of sorts, he still felt better having access to his GI pants. It made running easier. Hey Raditz, the bandit is coming back, Goku called out. Raditz looked outside, hopping out of the caravan and stood next to his younger brother. Yamcha took a breath, his eyes first looking towards Raditz before having to settle on Goku. Hey guys. I hope there aren't any hard feelings. Yamcha attempted to put on the charm, his missing tooth taking away any of the cool or suaveness the other boy may have been putting on to try and cover up his deception. We just thought about this whole thing and realized that maybe we were in the wrong for this whole thing. Here, take this capsule as an apology. Yamcha fumbled to grab the capsule from his pocket, hearing a muffled chuckle. What's so funny? You're such a liar, Raditz responded. Yamcha looked up, intending to defend his false noble actions, only to get caught up by the look Raditz had. Despite calling the other teen a liar, Raditz looked on with a mixture of amusement and fondness. That look did something to the desert bandit, his hands shaky as his mind wandered to places yet again. You okay, bandit boy? Fine. The other's voice cracked again, his hand throwing the capsule to the ground. When the smoke cleared, a car was left in its wake. I have to go now. Yamcha roughly turned his bike around, driving away quickly. I guess he is a nice guy after all. Goku grinned, going back inside to check on Bulma. I think he's probably just as sick in the head as the other two, Oolong muttered. We're getting closer to the next Dragon Ball. Bulma followed the radar as the group drove forward, feeling like she may still have a chance to gather all of the Dragon Balls before she had to return to school. I just don't like that we're getting so close to the Ox King's territory, Oolong commented, shivering at the thought of the crew getting caught. With their luck, it wasn't a matter of if, and more of a matter of when. Before Bulma could respond, she was interrupted by the sound of two distinct snores. Raditz, still tired from the previous few days, chose to nap in the back seat of the car. Goku decided to join him at one point, curled close to his brother's side. Bulma sighed, looking back towards the Dragon Ball radar, figuring she could let the two Sun brothers get a little bit of rest. As Goku lay still, Raditz shifted slightly. Bulma figured he must have been dreaming. These dreams didn't happen every time the older boy went to sleep, but it would be a lie to pretend they never happened at all. Incomplete images, or bits and pieces from the deepest depths of the older brother's mind would replay, sometimes connecting while other times just ending. The dreams stayed just long enough that Raditz knew used to have another family before he and his brother were adopted, but not long enough to remember why he and Goku were sent away in the first place. As he slept in the back of the car, these images and clips connected again, as much as his memory would allow. Oh look, he's going to cry. Faceless forms of children surrounded Raditz. Some were laughing, others were showing disgust through their body language. Tears clouded his vision, though he fought for them to vanish before they fell to the ground. We don't need a runt like you messing things up. A voice scoffed, waving a hand to lead the others away. I don't mess things up. The young Raditz's voice cracked, but it was too late. The others were already gone, leaving the young boy alone. The next place he found himself was a warm spot. While tears still pricked his eyes, he felt his hair soothingly being pet by a kind figure. Whispers of encouragement and praise filled his heart from someone who just wanted the best for him. As the young Raditz looked up, all he could again see was a blank face of someone he wished he still remembered. As tears threatened to fall again, the kind hand whipped them away before embracing him once again. Usually, this is where the dream would stop. Faceless peers insulting him only for him to be comforted by someone who cared. This time, slowly his dream shifted once more. The environment was tense. He didn't know why he felt scared, but the feeling of looming dread was washing over the young boy. One moment he was being held by the figure who calmed him in his dreams so many times. It was a tight hug, one that Raditz clung back to, wishing he didn't have to let go. The only thing that caused his hands to fall to his side was a different hand touching his head. This hand was firm, calloused from hard work. Despite how rough this hand seemed, there was a level of affection that Raditz knew was genuine. Despite feeling like he wanted to cry, Raditz held out his arms. He took a breath to stop the shaking, looking up to the two figures looking over him. After a moment, his arms were full. When he looked down he saw his baby brother. After that, the dream began to grow hazy again. He couldn't remember what happened next, or what he and Goku did. The only thing he could remember clearly through his dreams was the part of his memory he knew like the back of his hand. Raditz was all alone in the forest. doing his best to keep a steady hold on his little brother. Goku was crying and kicking to get out of his grasp. After a moment, Raditz watched as an older man appeared through the bamboo trees. So this is where all the crying was coming from. Are you two all right? I don't know. I don't know where I am. Raditz watched the old man walk closer to the two. He took a step back, holding his brother closer to his body. Don't worry. I promise I'm not a threat. Are you two hungry? A little bit. Raditz murmured, hesitantly following the old man. Nothing a little dinner can't solve. After that, I'll help you look for your parents. I don't know where the air, me and my brother just showed up here. Raditz watched the older man's brow furrow, looking at the pair of boys. Well, I'll try and help you remember the best I can. Do you two have names? Raditz thought, even in his dream. Goku's real name lay on the tip of his tongue. A secret his mind wouldn't divulge along with other details of his past. Raditz shook his head, adjusting his brother in his arms. I think my name is Raditz. I can't remember his name though. Raditz, like radish. You certainly seem like you're growing like a little vegetable. If you can't remember, that's all right. We can figure this out together, okay? The old man held out his hand. Raditz still felt hesitant, but something about the older man's smile made him feel safe, like he did around the other figures in his memories. Slowly, he extended his arm to take the hand. What's your name, Mr. Son Gohan? Come then, let's get some food in our bellies and milk for the little one. Raditz squeezed Gohan's hand, slowly walking through the forest, presumably to the home that the trio spent so much time together in. That was just one dream of hundreds he could have of his time together with his grandpa Gohan. A lot of these dreams appeared more often out of missing the old man. Raditz still laid back with his eyes closed, not ready to open them until he felt a palm smack him in the face. He grumbled, but opened his eyes to see Goku sitting on his chest. Wake up, Raditz, come on, there's this castle on fire, and Bulma said that there's a Dragon Ball in there, I'm gonna go get it. Raditz looked from the edge of the car, watching Goku run up to catch the other two traveling companions. In the distance, there was a large fire surrounding a castle in the distance. He was pretty sure he heard a story once or twice about the Ox King and his castle. Something Gramps Gohan may have said in passing while the teen was helping with chores. Where there was a castle, he assumed there to be treasure. As Raditz stepped out of the car, he watched Goku ride his cloud into the castle. Hey, just be careful there, the elder brother called out. Oolong and Bulma turned to him, quickly trying to shush Raditz. What's the big deal? What if he hears us? Bulma whispered harshly. Then we beat him up. Raditz shrugged, looking back towards the castle. Bulma and Oolong sighed, feeling like they should have known better. Raditz, why don't you keep watch? Fine. Why'd you put the bunny ears on with the tights? Raditz. The surrounding jungle was filled to the brim with different animals. Anywhere from dinosaurs to other wild beasts could be found roaming around the heated area of the Fry Pan Mountains. Over Raditz's shoulder, he dragged a freshly caught dinosaur he figured he'd share with the others when they were finished finding the Dragon Ball. As Raditz roamed, something in the distance caught his eye. What first appeared to be a small animal, formed into the body of a small girl, out cold on the ground. Raditz paused for a second, looking at his surroundings, before dropping the dinosaur and approaching the girl. Something must have hit her. Raditz adjusted the young girl, looking to see if he saw any visible wound or mark. As he looked, the young girl's eyes quickly opened and she hopped away. Gee, get away, or you'll be sorry. Raditz watched the younger girl shiver as she spoke, her hands moving to her helmet. Raditz held up a hand, standing up slowly from his spot. I'm not here to hurt you. It looks like you got a nasty bump. The girl sniffled, her eyes still looking at the older teen warily and not removing her hands. I did? So don't get any closer or you'll be sorry. My dad is the Ox King, so I'm his super strong daughter. Raditz tilted his head, thinking about the name again. Slowly, he shrugged his shoulders. My gramps used to know a guy called that. Said he and that ox guy used to train together. Who was your grandfather? Son Gohan, Raditz replied calmly. The young girl gasped, her hands lowering to her side. Son Gohan. Son Gohan. Yamcha cursed to himself, watching this situation go from bad to worse. Not only did he knock out the Ox King's daughter, but before he could try and smooth the situation over, the elder Sun brother found her. To top things off, the Sun brother's grandfather wasn't just any old man. It was confirmed that he was the famed martial artist's son Gohan. I guess that would explain why the little one has been able to fight so well, Lord Yamcha, Puar whispered. Yeah, I figured. I need to try and figure a way out of this before I get chopped to pieces. Raditz's ear twitched, his head turning to the bushes where the desert bandit lay hidden. After a moment, the older Sun brother sighed and looked back at Chi-Chi. And you said that some weirdo knocked you out? It's already been so stressful. And then this happens, Chi-Chi sniffled. Raditz looked back towards the brush of bushes, Yamcha swearing that Raditz was looking directly at him. I wouldn't worry too much about him, kid. I don't think he was trying to hurt you on purpose. Men can just be weird. You're a man. How'd I know you aren't weird? Raditz chuckled, watching the girl shift back and forth again. I probably am weird. That's alright though, I'm still me. I can walk ya back home if you want. Chi-Chi quickly shook her head, holding her hands out. I can't go back until I find the Bansho fan from my dad and your grandpa's old master. Why you need to take me there? Sorry, I'm not really sure who my Gramps' master was. A lot of time around Gramps I was focused on taking care of my little brother or chores. The look on Chi-Chi's face still tugged at Raditz's heartstrings a little too much. The girl looked like she was about to cry again, so his brain tried to come up with several strategies to lessen the effect. Luckily for Raditz, he didn't need to think too hard before Goku showed up. Raditz. Is that the Ox King's daughter? Yep. Says she's looking for a fan. That old turtle guy is supposed to have it. Yeah, you know that sort of explains at least a few things. Chi-Chi watched the two banter back and forth, though her eyes shifted quickly to the younger boy on the cloud. Raditz smiled slightly, taking a step back from Chi-Chi and closer to his younger brother. Hey, why don't you take her to the turtle guy's place? She needs to find the fan and it'd probably be easier than dragging someone bigger around. Goku thought for a moment, nodding and moving closer to the girl. Hop on, Bulma said. I gotta be a little quick. Chi-Chi nodded, trying to adjust herself on the cloud the best she could. In the process, her hand accidentally grasped the younger Sun brother's tail. Hey. Careful. When you do that it makes me really tired. Goku whined, making sure that Chi-Chi was in place on his cloud. Raditz sighed, still waving the pair off as they flew towards Roshi's home. Yamcha, still in the bushes, made sure to note that the tail was evidently the weak point he'd been looking for. His eyes followed Goku leaving with the Ox King's daughter, already formulating a plan on how to beat the younger boy the next time they fought. You're sort of bad at this, sweet face. Yamcha froze, slowly his head looking upwards. Standing above him was the older brother, his arms crossed and one eyebrow raised. Yamcha jumped back, immediately taking a defensive stat. He had yet properly gone against the older Sun brother, though his legs already felt weak at the thought. Raditz didn't move from his position, turning his head to follow the desert bandit's movements. I don't plan on attacking you unless you start something. So what if I do? I'm pretty good so. Raditz kept a close eye on the other's movements, a smile appearing on his face when he heard the other teen's voice crack yet again. Yamcha felt his face grow warm before taking a deep breath. I'm not scared of you. So, bring it on, if you think you can. I guess we're doing this then. Raditz changed his stance, deciding to let the other make the first move. Yamcha rushed forward, attempting to land the first blow as Raditz successfully blocked. In turn, the larger teen met the other's punches and kicks with his own. As Yamcha threw his attacks, he observed the differences between the two brothers' fighting techniques. Goku had a carefree energy when he fought, reflecting his young age and eagerness for battle. Raditz was more defined and trained with what he decided to do during a battle. While some of his stances and positions seemed reminiscent of martial art practice, others reflected a more serious and stern battle style practiced at one point in the teen's life. Goku could land hit after hit, finding the quickest way to take Yamcha down. Meanwhile, Raditz seemed to be wearing Yamcha out of his energy bit by bit. Yamcha jumped back, defending his position as his eyes quickly looked over the other teen again. While Raditz may be formally trained in martial arts, the bandit teen knew something that he would hope give him the upper hand. The little brother said he lost all of his energy from getting his tail pulled. Maybe if I do this with the big guy, he'll go down too. The teen thought, his eyes still holding on the other for a moment longer than he expected. Yamcha shook his head, looking back to his shapeshifting partner. Puar, Strategy 12. The other called out, rushing towards the other teen again. Raditz met the other's charge, quickly defending himself from another barrage of attacks. While this was an entertaining fight so far, Raditz just wanted to ensure that he didn't accidentally hurt the other teen. As the punches started to subside, Raditz took a step back. At least, he attempted to. Tied between two rocks was Puar, taking the form of a rope. Raditz struggled for his balance, his tail undoing itself from his GI pants to ensure he didn't fall over completely. Ha! Now I got you. A sudden jolt went through Raditz's body, his body turning sluggish and stiff. His head was able to turn slowly, observing the wolf bandit's little smirk as he firmly gripped the other's tail. Yamcha was about to start congratulating himself, thinking about how he was able to defeat the elder grandson of the famous Son Gohan. Additionally, if the others saw the desert bandit taking back one of their strongest as a hostage, they'd be sure to offer the Dragon Balls just for Raditz's safe return. Before Yamcha could fantasize any more about the possibilities laid before him, he thought he felt a rocking motion following the other's tail. When he turned his head back to the other teen, Raditz was falling right on top of him. Hey, tired, Raditz murmured, his face landing against the crook of the other's neck. As Yamcha opened his mouth to response, the warmth of the other's breath grazed the skin right above his bandana. His ears flushed a bright red, his pupils dilating unintentionally. The more the other tried to move out from underneath the larger teen, the more Yamcha realized that he was touching very strong muscles. Lord Yamcha, I think you need to let go of his tail, Puar commented, watching his master struggle with freeing himself for a solid minute. Yamcha hesitated, knowing that the second he let go of the other's tail that he would be dealing with an unhappy fighter who had just become temporarily paralyzed, all due to Yamcha's own actions. On the other hand, the longer he spent pinned underneath the other teenager made his brain stop working properly. As Yamcha let go, the other's tail flicked back and forth quickly. Slowly, Raditz sat up, looking down at the other teen. On one hand, to Yamcha's surprise, Raditz didn't look as pissed as he assumed he'd be. On the other hand, the expression Raditz gave the other only increased the growing awkwardness of the situation. Don't touch my tail, stupid, the other managed to murmur, his hand extending to the other's head. Yamcha tilted his head away, expecting to be hurt or worse, only to feel a slight flick from the other's fingers. Afterwards, Raditz stood up off the other. When Yamcha glanced at the other, he swore that the other man's ears were also flushed. That would be silly, we're both guys so. Before Yamcha could finish his thought, Raditz turned and pointed towards the other again. Just stop doing silly things, will you? 'Cause you're just going to end up getting yourself in trouble with some people that won't just ignore it because of your face. What about my face? I already said what I said, and right now it's still red, so you tell me. My face isn't red. Raditz was about to argue back with the other, only stopping when he noticed what he thought was his brother flying back with Chi-Chi. Behind him, flying in on a spinning turtle was the turtle pervert from before. Ah, I guess they were able to find the fan after all. Raditz shook his head, turning his attention back to the other. Before he was able to finish, the desert bandit had already disappeared yet again. Raditz stood still before feeling his face flush again, turning to walk towards the others with a quick huff. Lucky he is cute on days like these. Raditz would have never guessed the old turtle pervert had that much power in him, even if he evidently was the man who trained his grandfather. The group, including Yamcha, secretly standing to the side, gawked at the sheer power the Kamehameha wave had unleashed. When the dust settled, Goku's voice rang clear. Raditz can do something similar. Huh? Something similar? As eyes turned to Raditz, the elder teen shuffled his feet awkwardly. Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly that blast, but... Raditz learned how to make blasts, but he got in trouble for accidentally making a hole through a mountain, so Grandpa told him not to do that anymore. Raditz flushed, his eyes darting to the side as the awkward silence grew, only to be broken by Chi-Chi's voice. What's your special attack, brother-in-law? Why are you calling me that? Goku shook his head, still unsure about everything going on. Still, he wanted to support his brother. The younger son brother grinned, giving a thumbs up. Come on, big brother, it's been a while since you last used that attack. Raditz exhaled, glancing at the expectant faces around him. Not only were Bulma and Oolong paying attention, with Yamcha still off to the side, but also two people who clearly knew his grandfather well. A pit of nervousness formed in his stomach. He didn't want to make it seem like Grandpa Gohan had an untalented grandson. Fine. Like Goku said, it's been a while. Raditz turned away from the smoldering remains of the Ox King's castle. He held out his hand, searching for a safe spot where he could potentially fire his energy wave. Choosing the path of least resistance, the elder teen raised his hand, his palm slowly opening. Sunday, Raditz stated, short and sweet. A bright purple light formed from the palm of his hand, quickly shooting across the clearing. Despite his best efforts to control the energy applied to his attack, the wave continued to extend further and further until it finally collided with a plateau in the distance. Once the dust settled, there was a sizable hole left in the plateau, much like the one Goku had described earlier. Sorry about that. I tried to make sure it didn't go that far. Raditz sheepishly turned to the Ox King and bowed his head. The others stood in stunned silence, shocked by the raw power that had come from the elder teen. They hadn't realized just how dangerous Raditz could be with such power at his disposal. It's actually kind of scary how strong that is. Bulma thought for a moment, though any concern she might have had dissipated when she saw how flustered Raditz was. His unassuming nature made it all the more surprising. My boy, you definitely are the grandson of Son Gohan, Roshi finally said, stepping toward the older teen. I'd say you just need a little training to sharpen up your edges. I'll take that into consideration, old-timer. Raditz still kept his head bowed, feeling embarrassed by all the attention. Before Roshi could comment further, the two heard Goku practicing the Turtle Hermit's attack behind them. Now, boy, that attack took me 50 years to learn, I don't think. Goku finished the final syllable of the Kamehameha wave, instantly destroying the car the group had been traveling in. The younger son blinked curiously, then added, I guess 50 years makes sense, that blast wasn't nearly as strong as yours. Raditz watched Roshi's expression shift, clearly stunned by the immense power and potential possessed by the two brothers. Meanwhile, Bulma was more concerned about yet another vehicle being destroyed because of their antics. The only consolation was that, along with the Dragon Ball, the Ox King offered to let the group use one of his car capsules. Yamcha lay back in his car, gazing at the sky. First, he gets beaten up by some kid, then he learns about these mythical artifacts called Dragon Balls that can grant any wish, and now he keeps having strange encounters with the older brother of the annoying kid who beat him up. It wouldn't even be so bad if Yamcha just disliked the other teenager, but his feelings toward Raditz were more complicated than he was willing to admit just yet. As the desert bandit thought about the other teen, he couldn't help but reflect on the power displayed earlier. Not only were the two Sun brothers raised by the famous martial artist Son Gohan, but they were also far stronger than the average thug he was used to beating up. The fact that Goku could learn a move from the legendary Master Roshi just by witnessing it once, and that Raditz could blast a hole through solid rock, was concerning. The more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable he became, as if he were standing next to a ticking bomb of raw energy. Guess I should be lucky that they at least seem like kind-hearted people, the teen muttered aloud, trying to calm his growing unease. He chuckled at himself. Yeah, right. What's the worst that could happen? As he thought more about the energy wave display, his mind wandered back to their earlier fight. Yamcha wasn't sure why he was getting so caught up on Raditz of all people. If it was just because of Bulma, he'd understand that. But why was he experiencing similar feelings as if he were talking to a girl? It was almost frustrating, how easily Raditz seemed to occupy his thoughts. Lord Yamcha. Puar quickly approached the car, bouncing into view. They're getting ready to leave. All right. Hold on tight, we're going to do our best to follow them. The only Dragon Ball left was close to being obtained. Raditz watched as Bulma tracked the Dragon Ball on her radar, sighing when the girl became frustrated again at the moving dots. Someone probably has it, just like the others before, Raditz muttered. I know. It's just that whoever has the last one is moving around so much, it's hard to narrow it down. Bulma sighed, setting the radar down on her lap. She finally had a proper outfit to herself again after stopping in the previous town. Raditz was allowed to wear the top half of his GI again, though the desert heat still proved it was perhaps better to go without his shirt for a little while. "All we need to do is get the Dragon Balls so I can make my wish," Bulma commented, though her voice wavered slightly. Raditz faced the other direction, checking on Goku as the teenage girl glanced at the boy. Bulma had originally set out to find the perfect boyfriend. She was still almost certain that getting a perfect boyfriend was her absolute wish, but part of her questioned if that was still what she wanted. She wasn't sure about the specifications of what the dragon would or would not allow, but she did know the Sun brothers were without their grandfather due to some accident. As Bulma was lost in her thoughts, the car was suddenly attacked by an unseen force. It came to a screeching halt, sending the group tumbling out onto the desert sand. Goku squinted, sure he saw a Shiba dog clad in ninja attire controlling a robot. Raditz and Goku quickly stood, but the dog in the robotic suit had already grabbed Bulma's suitcase and begun its escape. Raditz cursed under his breath, giving Goku a quick nod. Goku called for his flying Nimbus, allowing Raditz to ride along as they pursued the robot. Bulma inspected the car, fretting over the damage. What is it with this group and getting every car destroyed in a matter of minutes? She muttered, shaking her head. Raditz and Goku shortly returned, Raditz hopping down from the Nimbus cloud first. The robot was empty, and the suitcase is gone. Then we've lost everything, Bulma cried, tugging at her lavender hair in frustration. Well, I still have Grandpa Gohan's 4-star ball, Raditz said, pulling the orb from his pocket. Bulma froze, her mood shifting almost immediately. Then we can still find them, she beamed, already pulling out her radar. Yeah, but the car is broken, Goku pointed out, walking over to kick it lightly. I don't think we have to worry about that for long, Oolong sighed, pointing to a vehicle approaching the group. Yamcha drove up, putting on his best, pretty boy-friendly smile as he raised a hand. Hey, fancy meeting you guys here, he said, awkwardly laughing. Yamcha scanned the group. Goku waved excitedly, and Bulma called out his name fondly, but as Yamcha's eyes swept across the group, they landed on Raditz. The two locked eyes briefly before Raditz turned his head with a slight HMPH, his cheeks dusting light pink. Okay, I'll bite. What's wrong with you two specifically? Oolong asked, already unimpressed by the teenage hormones on display. Oh, I think Big Bro's mad because I saw him and Yamcha wrestling on the ground earlier, Goku piped up cheerfully. Yamcha choked hard, Puar taking control of the car to keep it steady. Raditz turned to Bulma, hands raised defensively, his face flushing brighter. As expected, Bulma was already making a face. It wasn't like that, he came to start a fight. Yeah, Yamcha was holding his tail too much, except I don't know why his face got so red. When someone touches my tail, I just get tired. Maybe you're getting sick, Big Bro. The awkward conversation ended abruptly as Yamcha slammed his face into the steering wheel, the car horn blaring. His fists gripped the wheel tightly. Anyway, how about I help out? Yamcha stammered, his voice cracking with every other word. He kept his face pressed to the wheel, avoiding eye contact. Well, Bulma hummed, glancing at the damaged car. I don't know, Boot, since I'm such a great friend, you can help us, and Raditz. All you want, K, she added, shoving Raditz into the passenger seat. Due to his size, Yamcha was pushed back slightly, Raditz's upper body ending up sprawled across his lap. The two froze, staring at each other before Raditz bolted upright, glaring at Bulma. Cut it out. Which, Raditz thought bitterly, trying to ignore the awkward proximity to the desert bandit. Raditz pondered why Bulma was acting this way. She had voiced her interest in Yamcha, so why was she now trying to matchmake? Each time Raditz shot her a look, she seemed too amused with herself. Yamcha, meanwhile, focused on the radar, trying to ignore Raditz's closeness. Luckily for the group, they quickly approached where the Dragon Balls were located. Filling the horizon was a large castle with a sizable entrance. Despite the amount of people traveling together, it only took a matter of minutes for the group to enter the castle and find themselves trapped. Yamcha punched at the wall. It's no use, he sighed. The walls are too thick. He's going to steal my wish at this rate, Bulma wailed. Yamcha turned to the brothers. Why don't you use one of those energy blasts to get us out? How do you know about that? Goku asked, narrowing his eyes. He was spying again, Raditz said flatly. I wasn't spying. Raditz rolled his eyes. If I used my Sunday attack, we'd all get hurt in this cramped space. Goku, you wanna try? All right. Goku nodded, firing a Kamehameha wave that created a small opening. It was just large enough for Puar and Oolong to slip through and disrupt Pilaf's plans. Personally, Raditz never thought he would have been relieved hearing the perverted pig wishing for a pair of panties. As the wish was granted, the Dragon Balls suddenly flew across the sky. Hey, wait! Raditz gasped, watching in horror as his grandfather's keepsake was thrown across the sky. Where is it going? Goku interjected quickly. After a wish, the Dragon Balls scatter. That's just how they work, Bulma explained hesitantly, avoiding Raditz's crestfallen gaze. But hey, we found the all before, right? So it can happen again, the girl tried to explain. Despite this, the group didn't have too much time to focus on the location of the Dragon Balls as they were being moved to a much more dangerous cell. You guys seriously couldn't get away faster. Oolong and Puar had gotten caught again almost immediately, the two being thrown in with the others in their new holding cell. Raditz kicked the wall, grimacing as the steel made an echo. We're stuck in here, at least for now, the older teen sighed, moving to sit next to his little brother. Goku was still rubbing his head after trying to burst through the glass ceiling. We can't give up. We need to get out and get the Dragon Balls again, Yamcha stated, his fist smacking the metal wall. We wouldn't be able to do that for at least a year anyway, Bulma murmured, still unable to look Raditz in the eyes. After a wish is granted, the Dragon Balls scatter and turn into simple-looking stones. While they're rocks, I'm not able to track them with the Dragon Ball radar. You brats! Pilaf yelled over the intercom. For getting in my way, you won't live to see that day. This cell isn't just great for holding. You'll all shrivel up and die once the sun starts to heat it up in the morning. What? I don't want to shrivel up like a mummy. I didn't even bring my skincare products. My dreams of getting married. Goku observed everyone worrying but only had one thought come to mind. Did anyone bring any snacks with them? Goku sat back, eating an apple that was in his brother's pocket. He had tried to blast the wall apart with his Kamehameha wave, and now it was his brother's turn to attempt to free the group. Yamcha continued to attack the steel wall as Raditz attempted to focus his Sunday blast. Raditz's hand glowed as his energy wave charged, but he hesitated, trying to gauge his power. Bulma watched, taking an extra step away from the older brother in fear of any kickback. Eventually, Raditz lowered his hand and moved to sit next to Goku. We're too close to each other. Either I make a hole and blast us all in the process, or I accidentally heat up the metal before the sun even comes out. It's all right, I'm sure we'll figure something out. Goku hummed, giving Raditz half of the apple. Yeah, I'll make sure we figure something out. Raditz sighed, letting Goku lean against his shoulder. Raditz closed his eyes, thinking about what he could possibly do. At the moment, he couldn't even be mad about his grandpa's Dragon Ball disappearing. A keepsake is nice and all if you're even alive to remember the person. Puar, what are you even doing? Oolong broke the silence. Raditz opened an eye, glancing at the pig and cat. Looking at the moon. I want to see something pretty before I die. Wait. What phase is it? Raditz gulped, his head tilting to glance at the ground. Full. Why? Raditz's gaze went to his brother, his arm protectively squeezing around Goku. I need something to drape over him. Why? Bulma tilted her head. I don't know. Raditz always gets like this when the moon is out. Gramps did too. Goku hummed. My grandpa said a monster used to come out when the moon was full. Goku, that's just stories. I'm serious, it smashed grandpa and everything. Raditz winced, adjusting himself. Everything is fine, don't worry about it. A monster killed the legendary son Gohan, Yamcha exclaimed. Goku nodded, stepping away from his brother as he continued to explain the monster. It broke our house and the trees and everything else around. Goku. What did it look like? Goku paused before shrugging his shoulders. I don't know, I was asleep when it happened. How can you sleep while a monster stomps around destroying things? Will you guys stop talking? Raditz's tone was sharp. The older teen stood, his eyes frantically looking towards the floor and away from the glass ceiling above. Just stop talking. Don't tell me you're scared. Bulma raised a brow, though part of her felt slightly uneasy at how firm Raditz's tone had become. I just don't know why Grandpa always told me not to look at the moon. What could me looking at it do? Bulma and Yamcha both froze in place, looking at the younger son brother. Quickly, the group moved towards the farthest wall from Goku. Raditz, guys, just drop it. Raditz sounded almost desperate. Kid, the night your grandpa died, did you look at the moon? Oolong finally asked. Oh yeah. I went outside to pee and it sort of just happened. Goku hummed, his expression only changing to concern at his brother's reaction. It's okay. I know you're extra scared of the monster. If I see it this time, I'll fight it for you, okay? Raditz gave a weak nod, his hands starting to tug Goku in any direction that would give him less of a view of the moonlight. Alright. Goku, just whatever you do, don't look up there. Bulma, don't. Unfortunately, Goku being told not to look somewhere made him instinctively look in that direction. As the group began to panic, Raditz quickly moved to the other side of the cell. He knew it would take a moment before the moon fully took effect on his younger brother. Press yourself as close against the wall as possible. Huh? What are you guys? Almost like a silent signal, the younger son brother froze in place. His body started to shake, accompanied by the sounds of cracking bones and pulling muscles. Goku's body began to grow, turning into a giant ape. As Goku grew, not even the castle itself could contain him anymore. As soon as the walls started to break, Raditz pulled Bulma over his shoulder and started to run out of the wreckage. Yamcha, grab Oolong and run. Raditz breathed heavily, his eyes still focused on the ground as he set Bulma to her feet. Yamcha stopped, turning around to look as Goku wrecked Pilaf's castle brick by brick. Alright, mister. Explain yourself right now, Bulma yelled, her finger poking Raditz in the chest. Raditz took another breath, his fists clenching and unclenching before hesitantly looking up at the lavender-haired woman. Ever since we were kids, if one of us looked at the full moon, we'd turn into a giant monkey thing. When we turn, it's really hard to think or control anything you do. Grandpa Gohan always tried to make sure we were inside when the full moon happened, but I was mad at him one night and went out into the woods to train. He was too worried about me to make sure Goku didn't look at the moon and I wasn't there to help him with Goku, so it's not my brother's fault that Gramps got squished. I'm sorry for your loss, but right now I'd also like to not get squished, Oolong exclaimed, dodging a piece of rubble flung in his direction. How do you change back? We usually had to wait until morning. That's still hours away, Bulma cried out. Look, I don't know. Look out. Raditz and the rest dodged a large piece of rubble being tossed in their direction. Raditz rolled to the side, landing near Yamcha. Man, he's really on one tonight, Raditz murmured, standing up. Yamcha, I have two plans. If the first one doesn't work, I need your help with the second one. Sure. What's up? The other teen nodded, standing to his feet. I'm going to turn into an ape too, so I can try and get him to stop. You can control yourself as a monkey? Possibly. Pretty sure I can, Raditz explained sheepishly, not inspiring confidence in Yamcha. And plan 2. You know the tail is our weak point. Just do something, okay? I trust you. Raditz looked at the other boy pleadingly. Yamcha sighed, knowing he couldn't say no at this point. Alright, Thanks a ton. Hold my stuff. I didn't bring any spare clothes, Raditz casually explained, stripping off his clothes. Raditz took a deep breath, taking a sizable step away from the other teen as he looked up at the moon. His heart began beating faster and his breathing quickened. Bulma and Oolong dodged the falling debris as best they could. With the amount being broken and thrown, it was a miracle they weren't hit yet. Goku grabbed another piece of the castle, prepared to throw it in another direction. As the ground began to shake, the younger son brother turned his head to the source of the vibrations. Standing only slightly taller than the giant ape Goku was another intimidating-looking monkey. The only difference between the two was the shaggy fur of the other, almost making him baboon-like. Bulma's eyes grew wide, her mouth agape. Is that Raditz? Raditz roared out over the desert, his fists beating against his chest. The shockwaves from the sound made it difficult to stand. Goku huffed, making a low growling noise. Stepping out of the wreckage of the castle, he ran towards the other ape. The fighting between the two didn't slow just because they were larger now. If anything, their blows were deadlier due to the sheer force behind them. Bulma's attention only left the scene when she saw Yamcha running back toward them. "Why did you let him change?" Bulma screamed, her hands gripping Yamcha's shoulders tightly. "He said he was going to try and calm down Goku. We just need to give him a chance before we go to the second plan." "How do you know he isn't going to lose it either? He's at least trying. What's the worst that, hold him off so we can get the plane started." The two teens' heads darted toward the direction of Pilaf's voice. Following the dwarf's gaze led them to his female henchwoman, standing on top of a broken pillar near their getaway plane. In Mai's hands was a rocket launcher, aimed at Goku. Wait. No, don't," Yamcha called out, already having a bad feeling. The rocket launcher fired, sending a rocket-propelled grenade right into Goku's back. While the grenade didn't do lasting damage, Goku yelped at the sudden sting. The fighting between the two apes stopped, with Raditz turning Goku around to inspect his back. "They sort of remind me of monkeys at the zoo," Bulma commented, taking a step closer to Yamcha as she watched the elder monkey brother snarl. The two made low grunting noises towards each other before facing the plane the Pilaf gang was using to escape. Mai had hopped inside at this point, and the Pilaf gang was some distance away. A deep roar left the elder brother's mouth, yet it didn't close after the roar. A bright purple light, similar to his Sunday attack, started to form in the back of his throat, expelling it across the desert. The beam traveled, taking out only the wing of the Pilaf gang's plane. Both brothers roared, completely absorbed by the moon. Yamcha knew they wouldn't last the rest of the night in this state. Even if Raditz started out in control to focus on Goku, the attack on his brother had derailed any line of rational thought. "What now? How do we stop them?" Yamcha took a breath, turning to Puar. "I'm going to go and try to grab one of their tails." "Lord Yamcha, I have an idea," the desert bandit cried out, dodging rubble left and right, trying to get close enough to one of the brothers without getting hurt. "Man, if this doesn't work, I'm double dead," Yamcha reflected, looking between the two apes. "I know if I get Goku first, Raditz is going to be pissed. If I get Raditz, Goku might retaliate. I'll have to be crazy fast about this." Turning right, Yamcha went straight for Raditz. With an opening, he lunged toward the older teen's tail, grasping it in hand. With his eyes closed tight, he expected to be swatted into a gooey paste, only for nothing to happen. He didn't even feel Goku nearby. Yamcha opened his eyes, noticing that Goku had his back turned. In front of the large ape boy was Oolong, taking the form of a giant banana. Yamcha felt a drop of sweat form, his gaze quickly turning to the owner of the tail he was holding. Raditz was frozen in place. "Puar, turn into a pair of scissors," he called out. Puar quickly transformed, slicing off Raditz's tail. As the tail separated, it shrank back to its normal size in Yamcha's hand. Raditz's body returned to its original form, collapsing on the ground. The only noticeable change was a mark where the base of the tail used to be. Yamcha stared for a moment before hurriedly taking off his bandana and draping it across the other teen. His attention shifted when he heard the sound of Oolong in the distance. "A little help, please. I don't actually want to be monkey food." Yamcha rushed over, quickly hopping onto the other tail. Looking toward his partner, he shouted, "Now, Puar, cut it again." With one last snip, Goku transformed back as well. Bulma and Yamcha sat next to the two passed-out brothers, watching the moon lower in the sky and the sun slowly rise in its place. Even though the two were sure the brothers wouldn't transform into ape monsters again, they still wanted to keep an eye on them. As the two slept, Goku lay still in his sleeping position while Raditz shifted about in his sleep. "Wonder what he's dreaming about," Bulma wondered, noticing the distressed expression on the older teen's face. "Who knows, if I turned into a monster, I don't think I'd be having great dreams either," Yamcha admitted, glancing down at Raditz. Raditz's mind had a tendency to run wild after transformations. His dreams could focus on any element of his past, with the added stress of transformation only making things worse. While he was curious about his roots, the stress on his body, combined with bad memories, made the dreams far from pleasant. In his dream, Raditz was young again, standing around other faceless children. Despite knowing his current power, he could tell those children were stronger than him. Some turned to whisper amongst themselves, followed by tiny giggles directed his way. Suddenly, he was pushed to the ground with great force. Standing above Raditz was another child. While Raditz couldn't fully recognize him, the child's features were clearer than the other faceless figures. His eyes, like sharp daggers, looked Raditz over with disdain before the child scoffed and turned away. "We don't need a runt like you messing things up. If you can't handle practice missions, you'll die before you even leave home." "I don't mess things up," Raditz cried out, but the boy only glanced over his shoulder. "You're projected to be a mid-class warrior, but you're slower and sloppier than even the low-class fighters. At this rate, see if you can beg for mercy and become a butcher like your low-class mother." Raditz's heart urged him to stand and punch the boy for his words. Yet even in his dream, something stopped him. A projected cowardice. He knew the boy was stronger, and no matter how much he wanted to fight back, his body refused to move. As usual, his dream shifted to his warm spot. Soothing words spoke to him, and a kind hand stroked his hair, reassuring him that things would be okay. "I promise you, your father is nothing but proud of you. He'd love you no matter what." Raditz looked up, only able to see a soft smile. Gently, he was pulled onto the figure's lap, and a comforting hand ran through his hair, soothing him. Raditz's eyes fluttered open, feeling calmer than he had at the start of his dream. He could still feel the gentle sensation of fingers running through his hair, prompting him to glance upward. "Good. Goku waking up probably means Raditz will be awake in a moment," Yamcha commented, his hand slowly running through the other's hair. Raditz's head rested gently on the desert bandit's lap. Raditz's face flushed slightly as he enjoyed the moment before slowly propping himself up. Yamcha helped him sit, his own face slightly red. "Thanks, sorry, I feel like this went horribly," Raditz murmured. "Yeah, it sort of did. Still, we got through it, you know," Yamcha said with a soft half-smile. "Thanks for that. Then, are my clothes nearby?" Yamcha coughed slightly, quickly grabbing the folded GI from earlier. "Why yeah. No problem. Your brother is borrowing Oolong's pants. Probably a good thing you took yours off before transforming," he stammered. Raditz's face turned even brighter as he hurriedly slid his clothes back on, though he stayed close to Yamcha. "Raditz!" Goku yelled, running toward his older brother. Raditz smiled wider, holding his arms out to hug his younger brother. "Hey, are you doing okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. Something happened last night, but Bulma said it was just some strong guy or something." Raditz sighed in relief, nodding thankfully toward Bulma. He still wasn't sure when he'd break the news to Goku, but now wasn't the time. "You still got Grandpa's staff?" "Oh, no, wait, hold on, I'll grab it." Raditz sighed fondly, watching his brother attempt to run without his tail. "Wait." Raditz's hand instinctively reached for the base of his tail before he sighed deeply. Sorry about that. I wasn't sure what to do," Yamcha stammered, but Raditz just shook his head. "It's fine. It'll grow back at some point. Grandpa pulled it off once by accident." "Was it on accident, or was it a moon thing?" Yamcha asked. Raditz shook his head, watching Goku try to adjust. "Hold on, I'll help you look." Raditz tripped over his own feet as he ran forward, taking a moment or two before catching up with Goku. "So," Oolong hummed, "what are you guys going to do for a year until the Dragon Balls are active again?" Bulma sighed, looking at the wreckage of the desert landscape. "I guess I'm heading back to the city. I'll just have to wait another year for the perfect boyfriend. And I'll have to spend another year being afraid of girls," Yamcha sighed. "Huh? You talk to me just fine," Bulma pointed out, shrugging her shoulders. Wait, you're right. When did that happen?" Yamcha wondered aloud, glancing at her. Before Yamcha could continue, Bulma waved dismissively. "I'm not a psychologist, but you probably made yourself too nervous about girls since you wanted a girlfriend so badly. Liking a boy knocked some sense into you." Liking?" Yamcha stammered, but Bulma just rolled her eyes. "It's so obvious I can't even be jealous. Instead, I'll be a supportive friend. He likes you, even when you're a geek. Besides, if girls are the problem, maybe dating a boy will be easier. Just food for thought." Yamcha sat back down, his face still red. He realized he felt the same nervousness around Raditz as he did around women. The difference was that at least he could talk to Raditz most of the time. His gaze flickered across the landscape, landing on the elder son-brother walking back with Goku. Raditz met his eyes and returned the look with a slightly shy smile, causing Yamcha's heart to thump. Bulma walked past Yamcha, looking at the two brothers. What are you guys going to do for a year? I want to go train with Master Roshi, Goku chimed, remembering the old turtle hermit had given him permission. Are you sure, Goku? I mean, if you go with him, it'll be the first time we've been apart since you were little, Raditz said hesitantly. I know you'll be worried, and I'll miss you too, but I promise when I see you next, I'll be stronger than I am now. Goku hugged Raditz close. Besides, you should get stronger too. Then we can both be the strongest. The strongest, Raditz murmured, finally nodding. Okay. Just make sure you come see me as soon as you're done. Okay. Goku beamed, calling for his Nimbus cloud. Bulma sighed, turning to Raditz. I'm sorry I didn't mention the thing about the Dragon Balls. Raditz shook his head, stopping her. It's fine. We'll collect them again next year. Bulma rifled through her bag, gently handing him the Dragon Ball radar. You can keep it or give it to Goku, just so you can start searching as soon as they're active again. Come visit me in the meantime, okay? Raditz nodded, pulling her into a hug. Someone has to keep you out of trouble. Besides, you're my first friend. It'd suck to never see you again. Raditz sighed, watching Bulma prepare to leave as Goku excitedly talked about training with Master Roshi. While it was true he hadn't been apart from Goku since he could remember, he also hadn't been alone for as long as he could recall. As Raditz pondered, Yamcha slowly approached him. Hey. Raditz felt his face flush again. Hi. I was thinking about training for the next World Martial Arts Tournament. Well, I'm decent at fighting, or I think I am, and, well, you're good at fighting too, so I thought. Yeah, sure. If Goku's training somewhere, I wouldn't mind tagging along for a bit. Yamcha nodded, stepping slightly closer. Just a warning, I don't have much formal training. Try and keep up then, Raditz teased, sticking his tongue out playfully. Bulma shook her head, crossing her arms. Boys are hopeless. Why did I offer? Yamcha was proud of himself for asking Raditz to come train with him. He was even prouder of himself when he told Puar that the cat could take a break and visit Bulma in the city for a bit. He thought he could handle it, all until he was sitting on his motorbike with Raditz sitting behind him, the other teen's arms wrapped around his waist. It took all the willpower that the desert bandit had, not to crash the bike several times on the long journey back to the Diablo Desert. Raditz hopped off the bike, stretching his shoulders after a long ride. You said the tournament is in 8 months? Yeah. It's a super big deal. Martial artists from all over join in and the winner wins 500,000 zenny. Is that a lot? Raditz asked after a moment, tilting his head. Of course it's a lot. Like you wouldn't be loaded for life or anything, but you could get a lot of things with it. Oh, you steal things though anyway, so why does that matter? It would just be nice. Okay. Yamcha sighed, watching Raditz look around the area. Well, if you want to win, then you need to be able to take on anything that comes your way. Raditz hummed, glancing at the other over his shoulder. I'm a little rusty, but my grandpa trained with me a lot growing up. I, admittedly, don't have too much formal training. I can try and give you a few tips. The other smiled slightly, deciding to head towards Yamcha's makeshift base. This is going to be a long 8 months, Yamcha thought, flustering before hurrying to follow the other teen inside. Settling in was easier than Raditz first expected. Missing Goku was still an element that Raditz wasn't sure he could get over yet, but spending his time with Yamcha felt natural. The boys were around the same age, and they generally shared the same interests. Technique-wise, Yamcha was loose and free with his movements. Self-taught by nature, his manner of fighting adapted to the situation at hand. Raditz on the other hand fought with a sense of rigidness. His movements showed precision and practice, most evident from time he spent practicing with his grandfather. It was an especially long day of sparring, leaving the two laying outside for an extended period after their last battle. The quiet moments were slowly becoming easier to fill with the two talking about whatever came to mind. Raditz moved closer to the other teen, looking up at the sky as he listened to the other talk about his dreams for the future. I want to be really well off, with a house in the city. Wouldn't the city get pretty busy? Raditz hummed, tilting his head in Yamcha's direction. Not when you're loaded. I'd have a nice place, and even if I did bandit stuff as a side thing, I wouldn't have to worry about food or any of that other stuff. It'd be just right for me and the person I marry. Raditz watched the other fantasize, flustering slightly at the end detail. I may not have met a lot of people, but usually marriage isn't a fantasy most teens have. Why do you want to get married? Yamcha blinked, realizing he brought up a hypothetical that had technically become more complicated ever since he had met Raditz. Yamcha cleared his voice, turning his body to look at the other teen. It gets pretty lonely. You know, Puar and I do fine, but then I feel bad for keeping him out here alone all the time. When you're married, you're with someone who promises to stay with you and care about you forever. I just like the idea of being that close with someone. Raditz had to look to the side again, feeling his face flush brighter. Goku and I have been out on our own for a while. I'll always be there for him, but being around here has been nice since he's been out on his own. Yamcha watched the other shift, his own chest beating faster again. After a moment, he sat up slightly, glancing at the sky. Hey, so you don't turn into a monkey without your tail, right? Raditz flinched on reflex, though he shook his head. No. Yamcha hesitated, pulling Raditz up slowly and pointed towards the sky. You can see a lot of the stars out tonight too. Guess it's lucky you lost your tail for now at least. Raditz chuckled softly, glancing up towards the moon. Raditz listened to Yamcha talk about different stories about the stars and the moon as Raditz's gaze followed where he was pointing. Yamcha did that for a while, every fact or story replacing at least a little dread that filled Raditz's heart with something softer. After a moment, Raditz leaned on the other's arm. Yamcha's ears flushed again, his eyes shifting from the sky to the other by his side. I like looking at the moon with you, Raditz said softly, his eyes fluttering shut. I do too, Yamcha replied. Though being this close still made the desert bandit feel like he was going to throw up sometimes, it was 100 times easier than being this close to a girl. The two stayed outside well until the moon was in the opposite part of the sky. Still so funny, do you think this is how fast it took my Gramps to grow a beard? Raditz asked, distracting himself during the ferry ride to Papaya Island. Yamcha flustered again, having Raditz this close to him and touching his face out of curiosity. You seriously haven't had any type of facial hair? This is just whiskers anyway. None at all. It feels scratchy. My Gramps' beard was sort of like that. I am shaving as soon as we land. The other thought. Even if he was endeared to the other man, the proximity of Raditz constantly being close to Yamcha's face was still a little too much. Sometimes I forget that you and Goku don't have a lot of experience around others. That's because I'm a little older and Goku always speaks his mind. After this tournament, I really need to check in on that turtle old-timer. If he turned my brother into a pervert, I'm going to kill him. Let's hope that Goku only picked up martial arts instead of anything else. Yamcha put a hand on the other's shoulder, watching as the boat docked. Raditz shook his head, picking his bag up. Come on. We have to do the registration thing and then find a place to crash for the night. Is Puar coming? Yamcha grinned, following after the other. Yeah, Bulma said she was going to tag along too. Ah, good. It'll be nice seeing her without the stress of looking Dragon Balls. I'm going to make quick work of this. Once I get to the quarterfinals, I'm taking out your friend personally. I knew you were a crybaby, but I didn't think you were shameless enough to hide behind others. Krillin glared, a fire lighting in his eyes. As the taller monk charged, Krillin dodged perfectly and countered with a swift kick to the stomach. The bully flew across the arena, crashing into a wall with a resounding crack. Krillin stood in stunned silence, as did most of the audience. Yamcha's jaw dropped, his confidence in his chances of winning plummeting. Breaking the tension, the two Sun brothers erupted in cheers. See? I told you our training made us super strong, Goku shouted excitedly. Great work. You even cracked the wall, Raditz hollered. Krillin blushed under the praise, taking a deep breath. Maybe things would go fine after all. There you guys are, Bulma's voice rang out through the crowd. Raditz and Goku turned their heads quickly toward the sound of the teen girl, Raditz grinning wide. Bulma, over here. Did you guys see me fight? Goku cheered, running up to his friends. Raditz pushed his way through, heading toward the lavender-haired woman. As soon as the two teens were close enough, Bulma wrapped her arms around the taller teen. Man, look at you. Are those bangs? It's nice to see you too, Bulma. Raditz smiled warmly, squeezing the other girl. So what's this about Yamcha's hair? Oh, long hair isn't really in anymore. It suits you better, though, so I was just telling him he'd look totally cute if he cut it short. I was only thinking of you. The girl winked. You know he's easy to bully. Don't tease him. I'm not easy to bully, Yamcha murmured, moving to the other side. Bulma couldn't help but notice that, as the pair stood together, Yamcha's hand gently rested along the other side of Raditz's hip. Sue. Both teens flushed slightly, Raditz not moving away from the other. Hush. Come on, at least you can thank me a little, Bulma whined. Yamcha coughed awkwardly, still holding the other close to him. Krillin, standing close to Goku, tilted his head slightly. Hey Goku, is your brother, is he what? Goku tilted his head, looking back at Yamcha and his brother. Instead, his eyes quickly shifted to where Yamcha's hand was placed near his brother. Yamcha, that sort of sneak attack won't work anymore, remember? You're just touching my brother's butt since his tail is gone, Goku called out loudly. Both teens jumped, Raditz quickly turning around as Yamcha doubled over wheezing. Goku, not now. Not now what? Goku tilted to the other side before sighing and looking toward Krillin. I really don't get teenagers sometimes, Krillin. Or I guess I don't get older teenagers. Hey, since you're 13, are you going to start being weird too? Goku. I think the problem is that you also didn't know why Master Roshi wanted us to bring him a little hottie. Krillin sighed. Oh, Raditz, is Yamcha a hottie? He doesn't look like the pictures Master Roshi showed me. While Yamcha's first instinct was to feel mortified again, he felt a cold chill run down his back. Turning his head, Raditz's expression changed from embarrassment to a terrifying type of rage. The closest Yamcha could compare it to was when Raditz transformed into a giant ape and shot a massive energy wave across the desert because his brother experienced the equivalent of a bee sting. To make matters worse, on Yamcha's other side, he felt Bulma's expression turn equally scary. He wasn't sure if it was the same level of protectiveness over the older son-brother, or a natural reaction to the turtle hermit's perversion. Raditz's gaze quickly locked on the turtle hermit, Roshi taking a quick step back. Now, when you say it out of context, this sounds a lot worse than it actually was. Yeah, it was just part of my training. She had to look like a girl from one of the magazines, and she needed to wear panties, I think. I think panties are. Goku, my boy, I think that's enough. Roshi started to say, only to be interrupted by audible growling. What the hell do you think you were teaching my baby brother? Raditz hissed, his steps quickening every time the old turtle hermit moved back. Krillin was genuinely amazed at how fast Raditz was. The old turtle hermit was known for outrunning everyone, but Raditz's persistence was unmatched. Yamcha sighed, standing next to Krillin as he watched Raditz blow off steam. You ever see those chimps that snap and bite people's faces off? Why does this remind me of that? Krillin murmured. You have no idea how accurate that statement is, Yamcha sighed. The finalists for the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament gathered together. Similarly to their drawn lots in the preliminary round, each participant was being paired with another for their battle. Raditz and Goku stood close to one another, watching the names being placed on the board. Looks like you have that dinosaur guy. Goku nodded, still trying to ignore the foul smell of the warrior Bacterian. Yeah, and Yamcha got that one guy over there. Standing to the side was a serious-looking man with a white turban on his head. Looking at the board, Raditz saw that the name of the man Yamcha was fighting was Nam. Looks like this competition is legit, Raditz murmured, watching his name being matched with another on the board, Jackie Chun. Raditz turned his head, making eye contact with the older man he would be fighting later. Jackie looked nervous for a moment, causing Raditz to tilt his head. That old guy sure does look scared for being in a martial arts tournament. Roshi sighed internally. It wasn't that the old hermit thought Raditz could beat him in a serious fight. He just didn't want to deal with the older son-brother trying to claw his eyes out in a rage, as he had done earlier in the day. All right, everyone, get into your places. The first match is about to begin. Krillin groaned, knowing that he would have to face the grossest warrior around. It's all right, Krillin, we know you can do it, Goku cheered again. We'll be cheering for you from the sides, Raditz took a deep breath, watching as Yamcha was flung out of the ring by Nam. Despite the good effort the desert teen put into his fight, Nam had a severe sense of seriousness that managed to overtake the other. Man, guess I should try and win at least. Raditz shook his head, taking a step closer to where Yamcha had fallen. Despite the rough landing, the other teen still smiled up at Raditz when getting up. Hey, sorry, looks like we won't be fighting each other in the finals. Yamcha hummed, dusting himself off. Raditz watched the other, gaining a bit more admiration for Yamcha taking a loss in stride. Raditz didn't have too many opportunities to fight others, but there was always something in the back of his head when he thought about losing a serious fight. Fragments of his dream, and glimpses of the mean boy standing over him would flood his mind. Raditz shook his head, watching Yamcha shake Nam's hand before hopping off the stage. Guess it's up to me. Raditz smiled slightly, though Yamcha could tell immediately that there was a layer of edge surrounding that statement. Hey, really don't worry about it. You do your best and have fun, alright? Yamcha comforted the other, smiling softly. I figured it was going to be you or your little brother anyway. Raditz flustered, nodding as he heard his name called to the ring. Okay, wish me luck then. Alright folks, we're about to begin the match, the announcer called out over the stadium. Yamcha took his spot near Goku and Krillin to make sure he could get a good view of the match. Our first competitor is green on the scene, 18 years old and trained by his grandfather, son Raditz. Raditz is the elder brother of another contestant who will be fighting later, son Goku. Raditz walked out into the ring, gathering the general layout as his opponent stepped in. Our second competitor, a strong mysterious martial artist, claiming to be 22 years old, Jackie Chun. Jackie held up a peace sign to the audience, though a majority of them refused to believe that he was anywhere close to 22. A reminder. Only martial arts is allowed. If an opponent is knocked out of the ring, is down for the 10 count, or pleads mercy, they are out of the tournament. This round has no time limit. Are you ready? Raditz got into position, nodding his head towards the announcer as Jackie did the same. The whistle blew, indicating the match would begin. Raditz dashed forward fast, immediately attempting to strike the other with attacks. The older man effortlessly dodged his attacks, hardly breaking a sweat. Raditz cursed, trying to find an opening only for Jackie to dodge and throw the other off his balance. Raditz dug his feet down, preventing an easy elimination from the mysterious martial artist. You're pretty good, old man, Raditz murmured, moving inward towards the ring. How many times do I have to tell you all that I'm only 22? The other scoffed. You're pretty good yourself, however, right now you're working with 2 handicaps. I'm not working against anything that I can't fix, Raditz said, moving forward at a faster speed. Again, like before, Jackie was able to dodge. Raditz quickly turned his head, narrowly avoiding a kick from the other. You're a quick thinker, which is important in battle. However, your brain can only think so far ahead until it starts to lag behind your body. Additionally, while your attacks are strong, you focus on ending things as quickly as possible. It's admirable for you to become strong for others, or perhaps even strong for survival. Until you're able to find another reason to fight, you'll find it difficult to move forward. As the other man finished, he aimed another kick towards the teen. Raditz dodged again, feeling the wind from the other's kick fly past his bangs. To some degree, he knew that the old man was correct. His brain was starting to give out on him, his eyes trying to follow what the other would do. Raditz was also coming to the realization that while he was normally abnormally fast, it was becoming more difficult to keep up with his opponent. Fast, the older teen murmured to himself. You may be right about me, but that doesn't mean I'm going down without a fight. I'd be disappointed if you did, Jackie chuckled, preparing for the other's next move. The one thing the old man didn't expect was for Raditz's pose to change. If my current moveset is too slow, how about I show off something I learned? Raditz's hand settled in front of his face. Quickly, the teen jet forward at top speeds, performing quick striking attacks. Goku blinked, feeling like that move seemed familiar. After a moment, it properly clicked. That's Yamcha's move. Jackie found a harder time dodging, watching the other begin to gain momentum with his attacks. Raditz still appeared to lock in, his movements focused on trying to make contact. In the end, it didn't matter. The second Jackie had an opening, he managed to get behind the elder son brother. With a motion of his hands, a gust of wind formed, knocking Raditz off his feet and out of the ring. Raditz lay there stunned for a moment, looking at the sky. There was a slight sinking feeling that overcame him, though he still stood. He couldn't let his brother see him act disappointed or unsportsmanlike. Still, after Raditz shook the other man's hand, he went to stand near Yamcha. His stomach felt like it was twisting, trying to think about how to apologize to the other. Before he was able to open his mouth, he felt himself being lifted off the ground slightly in an embrace. "You did my move, yeah, I." Raditz struggled to find how to speak, looking at the expression on the other teen. I'm sorry I got knocked out. I know that you talked about the prize money stuff and..." "Hey wait no." Yamcha blinked, waving his hands slightly. "I'm sorry if I made it seem like that was the most important thing out of this. I think you did brilliant, and admittedly it sort of feels good watching someone else do Wolf Fang Fist. Makes me feel like I'm an actual teacher." "Really?" the other asked, slightly softer than usual. "Totally, honestly, getting to train with you was the best part out of this whole thing." Raditz flustered again, instinctively leaning against the other's shoulder. His mind was still running quickly, about what the old man had said, and the few thoughts he had from his past. After a moment, Yamcha spoke again. "So, crazy thought I had. Do you think that old guy might be Master Roshi? I mean, he sort of looks like him, but that old guy has hair and smells funny?" Yamcha sighed. He had asked Goku the same question earlier, only to get the same response. He was pretty sure this mysterious Jackie Chun was definitely the old turtle hermit in disguise. He just had to prove it. For right now, Yamcha looked back to the ring and pointed forward. "Goku is going to fight next. Let's cheer him on." "Hey Raditz, look, it grew back." Yamcha shivered slightly, remembering last time Goku had a tail. Raditz smiled, walking to the side of the ring. "Told you it would." "I didn't know you had a tail, Goku," Krillin asked, standing beside him. "Oh, I used to, but then it fell off. My brother used to have one too, but I guess it fell off at the same time as me." Krillin sighed, happy that at least he and Goku had moved on to the next round. As the announcer approached the boys, Goku did his best to answer questions, even if this was the first time he'd ever seen a microphone before. "So, how does it feel knowing your brother was defeated by contestant Jackie Chun? Are you worried, or are you on a path of vengeance?" Goku blinked confused before speaking again. "I'm just really excited to fight him. If he's that strong, then that means it should be a good fight. I might give him an extra bump on the head for my big brother though." Raditz sighed amused, though part of him did start to think too hard again. Goku was very strong. Naturally strong, maybe even stronger than him. When putting it into perspective, thinking back to what the old man had told him earlier, he had to question. If his little brother was stronger than him, how was Raditz supposed to proceed? Raditz stood to the side, watching as Goku made it to the final round of the tournament. His mind still tugged back to the words Jackie Chun said to him during their battle. A reason to fight, Raditz sighed internally, still confused. He had his reason, or so he thought. He'd had his reason since he was a little boy, as far back as he could remember. It was his job to protect his brother. But with Goku getting stronger day by day, how was he supposed to keep up? Raditz's eyes scanned the ring, watching as Jackie Chun and his brother entered. Jackie gave Raditz a nod, adding to the confused feelings the elder brother had been experiencing. Goku quickly turned to Raditz, shooting him a quick grin. "Don't worry, I got this guy." Raditz smiled slightly. "You can do it, Goku. Show him what you're made of." Raditz stood by Yamcha, watching as the fight began. As Raditz observed his brother, he started to think about the differences in their fighting styles. Goku was strong yet agile. His expression showed he was fighting in the moment, almost excited about his opponent's next move. He wasn't worried about defeat, not out of cockiness, but because he was having fun. Raditz sighed, his gaze shifting. The idea of fighting without reason was appealing, but Raditz wasn't sure he could commit to it. For as long as he could remember, every time he fought, it was in response to something. His training to protect Goku or fighting for his friend's safety were always high priorities. The closest he'd come to fighting without reason was during his training sessions with Yamcha. Even then, part of him fought to win the prize money after Yamcha showed interest in it. Maybe I really do need to figure out what I want out of fighting, Raditz thought, glancing at the sky. The sun was setting, turning it a nice orange. The fight in the arena was still going strong, with Goku countering Jackie Chun at every turn. Goku was relentless, managing to keep up with the older man no matter how many punches he threw. As the sun crept below the horizon, Jackie finally used an attack to freeze Goku in place. Lightning surprise. Goku. Raditz called out, watching his brother frozen in the air. Say mercy, boy, before it kills you, Jackie yelled. Goku tried to respond, his voice shaking from the shock. As he struggled, Raditz saw his brother's eyes widen. A look that sent a shiver down his spine. Having lost his tail, Raditz hadn't noticed anything wrong in the past 8 months of training with Yamcha. Yamcha and Krillin looked at each other, confused, before Raditz grabbed Yamcha's arm, pointing to the moon. Yamcha stuttered, quickly running to avoid the impending disaster. Raditz grabbed Krillin and followed as Goku transformed into his great ape form once again. Goku broke free from the lightning surprise attack, roaring as he stomped on the stadium. Krillin tried running to the side, calling out, Goku, please. You don't have to attack everyone. Just turn back and fight this. Raditz shook his head, watching Goku stomp around. Krillin, it's no use. In that form, your head gets all foggy, and you can't think straight. When I used to transform, I had to focus really hard, or I'd be a goner. And even then, it didn't always work. Roshi, disguised as Jackie, overheard and felt a double dose of distress. A giant monkey destroying things was bad enough, but the thought of Raditz regrowing his tail would make things worse. If that one ever regrows his tail, I don't know if I'll survive that fight, Roshi muttered. Quickly gathering his energy, Roshi turned to the moon. With a max-powered Kamehameha wave, he destroyed it, reverting Goku to his normal form. Though Goku didn't win, he proved himself a great and spirited fighter. Later, over dinner, Raditz kept glancing at his brother as he scarfed down plate after plate. His gaze shifted to Yamcha, sitting near Bulma and discussing Goku's match. So, what are you guys doing next? Bulma asked. Goku looked up, grinning. I'm going to look for Grandpa's Dragon Ball. I figured you might. If you find them all again, I'm still in the market for a boyfriend. No way. I want to keep Grandpa's Dragon Balls safe. Goku chided, earning chuckles from the others. What's a Dragon Ball? Krillin asked. It's our Grandpa's keepsake. I have to get it back. Goku exclaimed. Raditz decided it was a good time to explain his own plans. I think I'm going to go out and train alone for a bit. All alone? Bulma asked, looking between him and Yamcha. Raditz glanced at Yamcha, then at Goku. And not for long. I just want to figure some things out. Yamcha nodded. I get it. We'll talk later. Goku shrugged, smiling. Okay. When you're done, you can help me find the Dragon Ball. Raditz smiled at his brother. Yeah, no prob. I'll meet up with you in no time. What about you, Yamcha? Well, I was thinking of hanging around the city. I'll scope things out, Yamcha said with a grin. Well, if I'm not busy with school, I could show you around, Bulma teased. Someone has to keep you out of trouble. As Yamcha whined, Raditz felt a weight lift from his chest. As Goku flew off on his Nimbus, Raditz turned to Yamcha, his stomach churning with nerves. They'd known each other for over a year, and it was undeniable they liked each other. Noticing Raditz's expression, Yamcha placed a hand on his arm. Hey, don't sweat it. I'll wait for you. Just figure out what you need to. I can't remember the last time I was properly alone. Maybe that's a good thing. If it's too much, find your brother or come find me, okay? Okay. I'll miss you. I will too. After a moment, Yamcha leaned forward, kissing Raditz slowly and sweetly. Raditz felt his worries melt, leaning into the kiss for as long as he could. When they parted, Yamcha's face was red, his hands slightly shaky. Raditz smiled. Pretty good for a first kiss. I guess I'll have to come back safe for a second. You always tease me, Yamcha muttered, though a shy smile remained on his face. Guilty. See you soon, okay? Raditz looked out over the vast forest in front of him. It had been 3 days since he left the tournament, 3 days since he had been totally on his own. The quietness was still something the older boy was trying to get used to. Even after their grandfather died, Raditz still had Goku around, asking questions or telling him about things that he had seen in the forest. While with Yamcha, The other teen always was able to find something to break the silence between the two. Raditz looked ahead, continuing to follow the path. It was a solitary path, still too far out in the wilderness to attract many travelers. Raditz grabbed a case from his bag, glancing at the case he had received from Bulma before leaving. In the case were a handful of similar capsules to the kind that Bulma so heavily relied on. Raditz shook his head, looking at the different items to keep in mind. Sometimes I think these are more trouble than they're worth. Portable shelter isn't a bad idea though. Raditz sighed. This thought only proved to be more true as a low rumble crossed the land. Soon, after a moment, a raindrop fell onto Raditz's head. The teen shook his head, deciding that he might as well rest for the night. Listen up. You all are old enough to be warriors. It's time to start acting like it. That voice rang through Raditz's head. Raditz found himself standing among other children. They looked to be close to his age, though he couldn't distinguish anyone from each other. He looked towards the voice again. The man's voice was deep with a rough edge. He seemed annoyed, turning to a taller man standing near him. Kids today are more spoiled than ever. I was 4 when I first went into battle. The other man chuckled, his eyes settling upon Raditz. His stomach twisted, anticipating what the other man would say. That one's pretty tall for his age. Is he worth anything? Raditz watched the man touch the strange blue device on his face. The device lit up and made a few strange noises. The man smirked, looking at the young boy over again. Not bad, kid. Raditz, for a moment, felt hopeful for a moment, opening his mouth to respond. Not great either. I've seen ones like you come and go if you don't get it together, runt, the man laughed. Raditz felt his stomach twist again. Like this wasn't the first time he had heard it. Why was this so common, especially at such a young age? The laughing stopped suddenly, both men straightening their position to turn towards the door's entrance. Raditz tilted his head, trying to see who it was they were looking at. In the doorway stood a boy about his age. That same boy he'd been seeing more frequently in his dreams. He stood with a bored scowl, his gaze looking over everyone in the room. Sir. We were just about to. Shut up. It's insulting enough that I'm being forced to take trash along on a mission. I don't need your bootlicking. The boy scoffed, his eyes landing on Raditz. I don't even have to sense you. You're barely stronger than a Saibaman, if that. In the back of his mind, Raditz saw a flash of an ugly green creature making terrible noises. His stomach turned. He didn't know how he knew this next fact either, but the boy in front of him was strong in a way he had never experienced. I'm plenty strong. I train as much as I can. The boy's eyes narrowed, the expression of the adults turning pale as Raditz replied. Faster than his eyes could follow, Raditz was suddenly met with an abnormal level of pain to his stomach. For a few seconds, his body almost refused to take in air as he fell to the floor, gasping. As he laid, curled on the floor, the sound of snickering from the other children filled the area. There he goes again, always putting his mouth first, one child spoke. Not fast enough to see that, another followed. Raditz started to regain his breath, only for his vision to start to blur. No, not now. Seriously? Are you crying? The shorter boy sounded almost disgusted, his foot roughly turning the other on his back. I'm not. Raditz accidentally hiccuped, feeling tears leak from his eyes. Great, we aren't even on what would classify as a real mission, and this is the type of warrior I get. I don't need a runt messing up a practice mission, practice as it may be. I knew he was going to do this, the older man groaned, glaring down at Raditz. Go back to your butcher mother. No. I can do this. I'm not going to mess up. Raditz began to stand up, only to be shoved back to the ground. At this point, you're better off begging for mercy and joining your low-class mother. The boy his age spoke, a sting immediately washing over Raditz. As the pattern followed, he found himself being comforted, hearing the soft words of a kind woman talk him through it all. After a while, something different happened. As Raditz laid on the woman's lap, he heard the sound of another entering the space. Raditz. The voice was deep, confused in tone. What's he doing here? Don't be mad at him, dear. He and the children were going to go on a practice mission, but then S son showed up. Even in his dream, he tried to fill in the blank. Regardless of the missing chunk, Raditz heard the soft and kind voice show a layer of frustration when speaking of the incident earlier. Here, let me see him for a bit. check on the baby. Raditz felt his stomach twisting harder, even worse than earlier when he had actually been hurt. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I know you're a great fight and I'll get better and stronger so then I can be strong and go out and. Raditz only stopped when he felt a large hand lay on his head. Despite it being rough and calloused, it warmly stayed in place. You don't have to do anything, not for me or your mother. While the voice was firm, it was not unkind. Inexperienced maybe, like the man still wasn't used to being this soft, but what he was saying was genuine. Raditz looked up at the figure, his tears spilling out again. His blurred vision obscured most details, but in his heart he knew he was looking at his father. The older man gave a lazy smile, ruffling the other's hair after a moment. I know this will be difficult as you grow. Our kind aren't meant for kindness. To be honest, I still don't get it most of the time, but I'm glad your mother's kindness has rubbed off on you. Don't let them wear that out of you. Raditz's eyes opened wide, the light shining in from the capsule pod window. He sat there for a long moment, thinking about his dream. He had never had a dream that went that far into detail about his younger life. A lot of elements he still found confusing, like why he and others would have been sent out on missions at such an early age. What was the familiar facial technology the others were wearing? Or the odd-looking armor? After a moment, Raditz sighed, going towards the shower to think things off. Raditz made his way through the land, watching the forest change to grasslands. In the horizon lay small villages. Peaceful areas he could walk through without too much thought. Some villagers didn't give the teen much notice, while others avoided eye contact with the stranger. Raditz paid them no mind, moving from village to village. The only thing to give the elder son brother pause was when he noticed military vehicles around the village. Down the path, there were two soldiers murmuring to each other, not paying too much attention to the approaching teen until he was trying to pass the two. The soldiers straightened up, fumbling for their rifles to stand guard. Halt! Don't go any further, one yelled while the other followed with a, state your purpose. Raditz watched the two fumble, crossing his arms. I'm trying to pass through. What's with the get up? No one passes through on orders of Commander Red and the Red Ribbon Army. The soldiers couldn't help but smirk slightly once the first man finished stating their mandate. This was usually the part where civilians froze up and begged for their lives. Instead, after a moment, Raditz finally spoke with his head tilted to the side. What's that? The soldiers toppled over in shock, only to quickly stand back up again. If this punk didn't know the strength of the Red Ribbon Army, then they were going to show him personally. The pair quickly held their rifles up again, glaring towards the teen. Insolence. Back up or we'll shoot, how about that? Raditz rolled his eyes, continuing to walk forward. The soldiers got a little wide-eyed, surprised that their usual scare practices didn't work. We said back. With a loud bang, one of the soldiers fired at Raditz. Raditz paused, looking towards the soldiers. While making eye contact, he held out his hand, slowly opening it to show the bullet just shot laying in the palm of the elder son brother's hand. Raditz stared firmly. I'm giving you a 1-minute head start before I beat you nerds up. The soldiers shivered, quickly running in the direction of the military base. Raditz rolled his eyes, continuing his way into town. More than ever, walking through the village was an awkward experience. Similar to the village that Oolong used to terrify, Raditz could sense that a lot of people were inside their homes. The few that were out sent the nastiest stares towards the teen. Something must be up with those weird guys. Raditz murmured, putting his hands in his pockets. For the most part, the village was quiet besides the low machinery noises in the background. The only change to the quiet came when a scream fell over the village. Raditz's ear twitched, instinctively moving towards the sound of the disturbance. Weaving through the homes and stands of the main street, Raditz found himself in front of a home with 3 large men in army outfits and a woman standing outside. On the ground lay a battered older man. Standing behind him was a woman, holding a shotgun shakily at the soldiers. Clinging to her leg were 2 young children, crying at the situation. The purple-haired woman standing near the larger men crossed her arms. Put the gun down before you do something foolish, the purple-haired woman stated. Jay, just leave. My family doesn't have anything, what more could you want? The mother cried out. TCH, none of you ever listened. Orange orb, 5 stars on it. Said to be in this village, more specifically your home. My men have asked as nicely as they could, so at this point you have 2 options. she snapped her fingers. Quickly one man adjusted his rifle to aim towards the older man on the ground, as the second swiftly moved in to take the gun from the other woman's grasp. We kill the old man regardless, but here's your choice. Bring us the Dragon Ball, or your kids are now property of the Red Ribbon Army. The purple-haired woman said coldly, her face unchanging. As the third man quickly moved, attempting to grab the two children, he was kicked back with enough force to send him flying back 15 feet. The man pointing the gun at the older man briefly turned his head to look at what happened, only to have his feet swept underneath him, the gun falling to the ground. What the last man, holding the shotgun, started to exclaim, only to meet the eyes of an angry-looking teenager. The next thing the man knew, his forehead was being slammed against the others, losing consciousness on impact. To a normal pair of eyes like the mother and the children, this all happened faster than they could have comprehended. One moment the soldiers were making a move to restrain and hurt them. The next moment a long-haired teen in a martial arts gi was standing between them and the purple-haired woman, all members of the Red Ribbon Army on the ground. The purple-haired woman glared at Raditz, looking him up and down. She knew a few martial artists back at base, so she assumed that this was how the teenager was able to subdue the situation at such a speed. Who the hell are you? She chuffed. You aren't like the rest of these villagers. Just a traveler. I don't know who the hell you guys are or why you want Dragon Balls, but where the hell do you get off terrorizing people like this? The purple-haired woman's eyes widened the slightest, her head quickly glancing back to their stationed area. Violet had heard that Silver was recently bested by an abnormally strong martial artist, but those reports indicated it was by a boy with a monkey tail. While Raditz didn't fit the description, two martial artists showing up where the army was trying to obtain a Dragon Ball surely wasn't a coincidence. Quickly, Violet aimed her guns towards Raditz faster than her soldiers. Under orders from Commander Red and the Red Ribbon Army, you are to relinquish any Dragon Ball you have, or you'll eat lead. I still don't know who the hell you people are, but if you want the Dragon Balls bad enough you're willing to hurt people, I'm not going to let you take them. Raditz got into position, his head quickly turning to the family behind him. Get inside quick. Violet began firing towards Raditz, the flurry of bullets still fairly wide. Raditz cursed, standing in front of the bullet barrage, falling to his knees when it was over. The family looked on in terror, watching Violet smirk at the sight. Foolish, that's what happens to idiots throwing their lives away over. Raditz shook his hair, standing up with stray bullets falling to the side. Man, that's super sore. You mess up my clothes too. Violet stuttered, as did the family. Raditz turned his head, glaring towards Violet. That's it, I'm doing this fast. Violet felt the slightest twinge of nervousness, only to see backup appearing. She smirked towards the teen. Have fun beating us. Fast. Then, the woman quickly slid behind her soldiers, the men taking their places. Raditz sighed, getting in the position to start fighting. Since there's a lot of you, I'll just go ahead and get you guys out of the way. Raditz moved into the position of the Wolf Fang fist technique, choosing instead of focusing all of his blows towards one individual that he'd complete a blow for each soldier. When Violet turned her head, she gasped. She didn't care if her men lived or died, but the least they could do would be cannon fodder for at least a little bit. Cursing, Violet grabbed something from her pocket. Fine, if we can't be civil about this we'll dig out the Dragon Ball from the rubble. Violet bit the pin off a grenade, tossing it towards Raditz. Raditz blinked, catching the strange object. What is it? It's a bomb. Get rid of it before it explodes, the woman yelled, hugging her two children close to her. Raditz understood that much, throwing the grenade into the sky as high as he could. For good measure, he hesitantly looked at his hands. Okay, I can do this. Raditz focused his ki into his hands, watching the energy build up in a large cluster towards his palm. He focused, eventually channeling that ki to his finger. Sunday. The blast from his finger was more fine, shooting up towards the sky and hitting the grenade right before it started to fall again. In the sky it exploded with the aftermath of the other's ki blast still coloring the sky. Violet stood near her plane, dumbfounded to the point that she couldn't move away fast enough. Raditz rushed towards her, administering a simple karate chop to her back to knock her out. We can't thank you enough, young man. The old man bowed deeply as the other villagers surrounded the teen. We were sure that our village would lay in waste. It's not a problem, really. They were going to hurt you guys. Raditz shrugged, though he felt a weird warmth in his chest. We're serious. None of us could have done what you did. Raditz nodded, feeling slightly shy the more he tried to play off what happened. Stepping forward was the older boy from the family he protected. Why do they want these things? Slowly from the boy's pocket he pulled out the 5-star Dragon Ball. You had it? His mother gasped as the younger boy looked up. We found it the other day when we were playing. I just thought we could sell it for money. Raditz sighed, taking a look at it. There are 7 of these balls. Combine them all together and you get a wish. My grandpa used to have one with 4 stars on it. The mother hesitated for a moment before speaking. They said they had a way to track these things. Yeah. My best friend has a radar. So, that means they'll be back. The older man sighed, looking towards Raditz. Our village can't take another attack like this. Raditz nodded after a moment. I can take it off your hands. Who are those army guys anyway? Only the world's largest criminal organization, a villager called out. Yeah, they probably don't want these for any good reason, Raditz sighed, placing the Dragon Ball in his pocket. After a moment, something tugged at his stomach. Aw geez. Goku's probably already met a few of these guys. I really should go make sure my brother isn't being bothered by these guys. Snip Yamcha sighed, looking over his appearance. On the bathroom floor lay his long locks, a huge weight lifted off the teen's shoulders. There was still enough hair to shape his face, but the long mane he had worked so hard to grow was now gone. It's all right, Lord Yamcha. You're still very handsome, Puar chimed as Yamcha inspected his reflection. All this just to be on a school baseball team, Yamcha sighed, adjusting his hair to lay the way he wanted. He hadn't minded the offer when Bulma asked if he wanted to go back to school. Ever since he went out on his own, the former desert bandit had focused mostly on stealing goods and fighting. He still liked both, but it was nice to have a moment to relax from those things again. Baseball was part of that. Even though Yamcha was considerably stronger than anyone else who might have signed up for the team, he still liked playing the game. The only problem came when the school coach insisted he cut his hair to play. It'll grow back, I guess, he murmured, though part of him felt his stomach twist. I don't think he'd actually care if it was shorter. The teen couldn't help but think back to Raditz commenting on his love for the other's long hair. When Bulma tried to push Raditz into a shorter haircut, it was Raditz who made her stop forcing the matter. Regardless, he and Puar swept up the hair. Leaving the bathroom, Yamcha went to gather the things he'd need for practice after school and any further training he'd do. As he left his room, he was met by Bulma's mother giving him a polite wave. He appreciated Bulma allowing him to stay at her residence while he was in the city. My, don't you look handsome, you'll have the girls falling all over you. Mom, stop, Bulma interjected, walking past the other teen. He has a boyfriend. I guess that does make sense considering your mouth, hun, her mother responded in a friendly tone, as if she hadn't just said something rude to her daughter. Bulma growled, slinging a backpack over her shoulder and stomping out of the house. Yamcha awkwardly followed, not ready for the animosity that would follow once he stepped outside. He and Bulma weren't together, so it wasn't like she was jealous of another woman stealing him, but she also wasn't a fan of the mass of fangirls Yamcha had accumulated upon entering her school. Do they seriously have to follow you around? Why don't you tell them off, Yamcha? I mean, they aren't hurting anyone, Yamcha stuttered out, though there was a level of discomfort from having so many girls swooning over him. Yamcha didn't understand why so many girls were interested. Sure, his vanity led him to believe he was attractive. He was also strong and decent at sports, which earned him a few more points. But Yamcha didn't really pay the girls that followed him much mind. Even if it had been a few weeks since he'd last seen Raditz, Yamcha was in a committed relationship with someone else. If you were my boyfriend, I'd be pretty jealous right now, I gotta say, Bulma stated, giving the girls another glare. What? Why? Because, Yamcha, you go from someone who can barely even talk to girls to having an entire fan club. Some of those girls are even cute. She rolled her eyes but softened her expression. I know though that you go all in, so you wouldn't like any of those girls. Of course not. I like the relationship I'm in, even though I'm not sure how well he'll take to my hair change. You're still nervous about that? Bulma scoffed with her hands on her hips, stopping for a moment. How shallow do you think Raditz is? He and Goku, Even if Raditz has more sense, our country bumpkins that don't care too much about a lot of things. I think he likes you more for your personality than how you look. Besides, I say you look nice with short hair. Yamcha sighed, knowing she was right at least about Raditz not being shallow. Despite this, his hand still awkwardly played with the ends of his hair. Walking into school, the teen was just ready to get to baseball practice. If I want to get to Goku, I'll need to have a radar myself, Raditz sighed, watching as the city skyline grew larger on the horizon. He was sure Bulma could craft a second radar, or at the very least, Goku would locate her quickly if he somehow broke the first one. The city was much busier than the other areas he'd traveled through. People bustled everywhere, driving cars and other motorized vehicles. Raditz sniffed the air, but there were too many overlapping scents to pinpoint anyone familiar. As he wandered the streets, trying to get a sense of the city, he noticed several people giving him strange looks. Some were curious about his long hair, while others seemed focused on his tattered, bullet-riddled GI. Eventually, a faint but familiar scent caught his attention, leading him to a large, dome-shaped building labeled Capsule Corp. Makes sense she'd live here, she had so many of those capsule things, he muttered, shaking his head. Raditz sniffed again, detecting a few scents that were similar to Bulma's. Another scent, one far more familiar, made his face flush slightly. Makes sense he's staying here, but he's not inside. Before Raditz could ponder further, a robotic voice spoke from a nearby intercom. Hello, brief residents. What do you need? Is Bulma or Yamcha here? Raditz asked, though he was fairly certain they weren't. Both are currently at school. Who are you, and what do you need? Raditz was about to respond when the robotic voice was replaced by a warm, cheerful one. Oh, hello, who are you? Hi. I'm Raditz. I'm a friend of Bulma's. Oh, come right in. My daughter has said a lot about you. The gates to the home opened, and shortly after, the front door followed. A blonde woman, bearing a strong resemblance to Bulma, stood in the doorway. Before Raditz could speak, the blonde gasped and rushed toward him. You poor thing. You must be freezing with all those tears in your clothes, she exclaimed, tugging him inside. Don't you worry. My husband has plenty of extra things. Really, you don't, honey? Another one of our daughter's friends is here, the woman called out, leading Raditz past a cozy office. An older man stepped out, adjusting his glasses. My, look how tall this one is. Now, are you the older brother or the younger brother? Older, sir. My name is Son Raditz. Come now, we need to find you something decent to wear, the woman interrupted. You look like you were jumped by a gang of moths. Raditz barely had a chance to protest as Bulma's parents whisked him away. Raditz looked down at his new clothes with a mix of curiosity and resignation. The shirt felt a bit tight due to his height and build, but it worked for now. My, aren't you just so handsome, Bulma's mother cooed. Thanks, but why does the shirt say Badman? Raditz asked, tilting his head. It's fashionable, Raditz shook his head, not understanding fashion. He couldn't button the shirt, so he left it open, exposing the plain white undershirt beneath. He'd also been given sweatpants, which, thankfully, stretched enough to accommodate his size. What I was trying to ask earlier is where Bulma and Yamcha are, Raditz said, finally managing to speak. Oh, they should be at school. My daughter might be out and about by now, and Yamcha-kun is probably at baseball. Baseball? Raditz tilted his head. Do you want to know how to get to the baseball field? Raditz nodded. Dr. Briefs entered the room at that moment, holding a capsule. This is a motorbike with GPS programmed to the school. Just be careful on the road, young man. Raditz accepted the capsule with a nod and waved as he left. Thank you, I appreciate it. Following the GPS directions, the bike led Raditz to an area filled with large buildings. He sniffed the air again, his heightened senses catching Bulma's scent, though it was faint. Another scent, far more prominent, caught his attention. Yamcha, he whispered to himself, following the trail. As he approached the baseball field, Raditz paused, taking in the unfamiliar scene. Teenagers were running back and forth, hitting a small ball with a stick. He didn't fully understand the game but moved closer to where a group of spectators had gathered. Kaya, Yam-kun is going to bat next, one of the girls sighed, leaning against the fence. Yamcha is? Raditz asked, his gaze narrowing. The girls turned to look at him, their expressions shifting from awe to nervousness. Of course he is. Yam-kun is so cool. He's so handsome too. Raditz felt a flash of heat in his chest. His eyes followed theirs to the field, where he saw a familiar figure step up to bat. Yamcha leaned back, waiting for the pitch. When the ball came his way, he swung, sending it soaring out of sight. His teammates groaned, clearly used to such a display of strength, as Yamcha jogged the bases. When he removed his helmet, Raditz couldn't hold back. "Yamcha," he called out, loud enough to turn heads. Yamcha looked over, confused, just as Raditz tackled him to the ground. Before Yamcha could even process what was happening, Raditz kissed him roughly. It only lasted a moment before Raditz pulled back, grinning down at his flustered boyfriend. Hi, Yamcha stuttered, his face bright red. "Hi, oh wow, your hair is a lot shorter. It looks really soft though. It's easier to see your face when you blush," Raditz purred, running his fingers through Yamcha's hair. Yamcha's face grew even redder as he tried to get the taller team to stand up. Around them, his teammates coughed awkwardly, unsure how to react. "Yeah, I had to cut it for sports. I didn't expect to see you so soon." "Oh, I need another dragon radar to find Goku. Some jerks are trying to collect Dragon Balls," Raditz sighed, resting his arms on Yamcha's shoulders. Great. Bulma usually runs around the city shopping. I can try and help you find her after practice," Yamcha hummed. Raditz nodded, still leaning in as close as possible to the other. Yamcha sighed, though his happiness turned to worry when he heard his fans starting to murmur. "That guy looks scary, he really just ran out and tackled Yam-kun. He even kissed him. Poor Yam-kun." Yamcha was about to open his mouth, only to watch Raditz turn his head toward the girls. Yamcha didn't even need to see his expression. He could feel the intensity of the glare Raditz was probably delivering. Suddenly, there was a tightness around Yamcha's waist, like he was being pulled more securely toward Raditz. The only thing was that Raditz's arms were still around Yamcha's neck and shoulders. "Oh my god! What is that? Does he have a tail?" the girls shrieked. Raditz blinked, his tail flicking away from grasping his boyfriend and back into his line of sight. Guess it grew back," he shrugged. "Yeah, I guess we're lucky that the moon is gone." How did it grow back?" Yamcha tilted his head, watching the tail settle into place. Raditz flushed slightly, glancing at the girls who were now backing away. "You're my boyfriend, so if they've got something to say, they can fight me." Yamcha coughed slightly, gently putting an arm around the other's body. "I appreciate it, to be clear, and, I don't like them." Raditz shook his head, leaning into Yamcha's side. "I wasn't worried about that. You're sweet and very genuine, I just might also be a tiny bit possessive." Yamcha sighed, his gaze shifting to his coach, who was motioning that practice was ending early. He didn't blame the man. An odd day when your star player's monkey boyfriend accidentally crashes practice. Raditz followed the other team, his tail protectively wrapped around Yamcha's waist as they walked forward. Yamcha flushed slightly at the gesture, but he still felt his heart skip a beat. Raditz really did miss him, even though they had only been separated for about a month. After a moment, Yamcha's hand gently squeezed the other's, causing Raditz to light up. "Bulma is probably close by. Oh my god, what happened to you?" Bulma's voice rang out loudly through the crowded city street. Raditz blinked, his free hand waving toward the lavender-haired girl. "Hi, Bulma." Bulma rushed up to the pair, her hands quickly grabbing the pink shirt on her friend's back and yanking it off. "Why are you wearing my dad's shirt?" "Your mom gave it to me." "What's wrong with it?" Raditz tilted his head, watching her reaction. "My GI got messed up." "They really are impossible sometimes, you look ridiculous with that on." "I still don't know what the shirt means, really," Raditz said with a shrug, watching the girl sigh. "It's just totally uncool looking," she muttered, shaking her head. "Come on, before you do anything else, I'm at least going to get you clothes that make you look like a cool teenager." Raditz sighed, knowing there wasn't much he could do to argue with Bulma. Fine. When you're done, I need a Dragon Ball radar." "What for? Are you trying to find Goku?" "Yeah. Some jerks have been looking for the Dragon Balls. I figured that if I had my own radar, I'd run into Goku eventually." Bulma shook her head with a subtle sigh. You're just lucky I'm a genius, but since it won't take me any time at all, I'm going to make you look like a hunk instead of some weird degenerate. Yamcha sighed, watching Raditz disappear into one of the many stores the city had to offer. Yamcha waited outside the stores for what felt like hours, though in reality, it was only about an hour, before Raditz finally emerged behind Bulma. Instead of his original attire, he wore a light blue button-up shirt and loose athletic pants. In a bag, Raditz carried other outfits, probably aligned with Bulma's taste. There, now you look like a functioning member of society, Bulma cheered, still dragging the elder teen along with her. Now come on. I can make you a radar really quick. Raditz watched the lavender-haired teen work, standing close to Yamcha's side. His tail subconsciously wrapped around the other's wrist, causing Yamcha to blush slightly. All right, I'm almost done. You guys should really thank me more often. This sort of tech genius is rare, Bulma gloated, tossing the electronic device to the taller teen. Her gaze then shifted to the other teen dressed in baseball attire. So, are you going to tag along with him? Yamcha blinked, not having actually considered that aspect of Raditz appearing. Despite being apart for a few weeks, it was obvious the former desert bandit did miss the elder son brother. Raditz glanced to the side, his tail still gently squeezing the other's arm. I know you were playing that ball game. I wouldn't want to pull you out of that if you're having fun, Raditz said sincerely. His eyes fell back on the desert teen. Raditz thought back to Yamcha talking about the prospect of moving to the city, building a life. Raditz never had a formal education, but Yamcha was someone who not only had experience with it but was also enrolled in classes in baseball. Yamcha shook his head, smiling softly at the elder son brother. My next game isn't until next week. Besides, I'd be worried sick until we were able to find Goku if there really are some guys after the Dragon Balls. Raditz felt his chest warm, looking at the other fondly. By the way, Raditz, Bulma started. Who are the guys after Goku, anyway? I don't know. They said they were some red ribbon jerks. Bulma and Yamcha turned pale. Red ribbon jerks? Yamcha echoed, as Bulma opened her mouth after a moment. As in the Red Ribbon Army, yeah. Are they a big deal or something? Raditz asked, shrugging his shoulders. I already beat up a lot of them, so how much worse could it be? Raditz looked out at the road ahead, the beeping of the Dragon Ball radar buzzing in his ears. He had to find Goku as soon as possible. Even if he didn't think that these Red Ribbon Army guys were a big deal, he still wasn't about to have his little brother go against them alone. Besides, even if the elder son brother was certain that he could perform a butt-kicking against the strongest of these soldiers, he still didn't like the side effects that the Red Ribbon Army was having on the people in surrounding villages. Yamcha was busy looking over the capsule bike provided by Dr. Briefs. It had enough room for 2 people and should easily be enough to transport the pair anywhere they needed to go for a while. Yamcha slung a bag into a compartment underneath the bike, sliding his sword across his shoulders. Despite having the sword, the desert teen still looked a bit different than he did about 2 years ago. His hair was shorter and he wore more casual clothing. Despite this, he still maintained a soft tan from years of spending time under the desert sun. He appeared less as a rogue bandit and more of a teenage hobbyist, which he did suppose he was. The 19-year-old looked back to Raditz, watching him approach the bike. You ready? Yamcha asked, leaning against the machine. Raditz nodded, still giving the bike a curious one-over. I'm still not too great at driving these things. It'd probably be safer for the 2 of us if you did the driving. Yamcha laughed lightly, giving a quick nod. As the 2 mounted the bike, Bulma's voice carried out over the plaza. The teen girl ran up, Puar in tow. Seriously you guys? Just wait a second, will you? Bulma barked out, her arms crossing. Yamcha laughed, a drop of sweat forming as the girl pouted in their direction. Raditz sighed, leaning against the bike. What's up? Bulma quickly handed the pair a case. Raditz blinked, recognizing it as the same container. Doesn't Yamcha have a container for these things? It's not about the container, it's about what's inside them, dummy. Bulma turned her nose up, looking to the side. There are plenty of appliances and other things you might find useful. Plus there's extra stuff in case you 2 run out of anything. You're the one that would always lose everything, Raditz said flatly, ignoring the glare that Bulma sent his way. Raditz took the container, placing it in his pocket. He gave Bulma a little nod, his mouth forming a slow grin. Thanks for the stuff, Bulma. We'll be careful. Yamcha blinked slightly as the route took them towards the familiar Diablo Desert. The familiar desert stretched out, farther than the eye could see. Raditz followed the radar, watching the blinking lights carefully, watching as a signal grew closer the further they ventured forth. You think Goku made it out this way? Yamcha asked, weaving between rocks. Who knows? I just know that if he's collected Dragon Balls, and we're collecting Dragon Balls, we should run into him eventually. Yamcha nodded, looking out over the desert. Slowly as they moved across the large landscape, a shape started to appear. It started small, but started to grow larger and larger. Yamcha gulped, noticing the bright red emblem on the outside of the building. You don't think that's probably where the signal is coming from, do you? Yamcha murmured, steadying the bike. I'd bet on it. Raditz hummed, closing his eyes for a moment. He squeezed his arms around Yamcha, leaning his head against his shoulder. I'm not worried though. We'll beat them up if we really need to. Yamcha sighed, a small smile appearing on his face. Raditz was blunt and not worried about the army. It was difficult to feel worried with someone so calm about the situation. If he and Raditz stuck together, they shouldn't run into any more trouble than usual. As the two went down the road, they failed to notice something watching them. Something mechanical. Inside the base, soldiers were scurrying back and forth. According to the radar, a Dragon Ball was located somewhere in the desert, and by orders of the commander, the Red Ribbon Army was tasked to find it. This did not ease the soldiers' worries, knowing that if they returned empty-handed they'd probably face a fate worse than death. The sound of leather shoes tapping along the floor quickly defended the worry of those around. When the general was approaching, the other soldiers knew better than to act out of line. Reports? A deep voice asked, a large man through the opening. A soldier swallowed hard, a lump already forming in his throat. Sir, it appears we have two people riding towards the base. It was caught on one of the good doctor's spy gear. The general let out a sigh, looking out the window. The desert was mostly empty, aside from the few soldiers with shovels looking for places to dig. The further he looked out, the softer his gaze became for a moment. Hunched over, digging through the dirt, was a roadrunner. The bird stayed like that for a moment before it tilted its head back to feast on what it had found. Around the bird were smaller animals going about their day, some hunting prey and others taking a break on nearby cactuses. Then a tank started to roll by. The general flinched inadvertently. The roadrunner was gone by the time he looked back. For a moment, but only for a moment, he felt a sadness in his heart. When told he was going to be in charge of this desert outpost, he originally felt lucky that he wouldn't have to bother with troublesome civilian interactions. Instead, the general watched as the local animal and wildlife population suffered. He sighed, looking back towards the soldier. My father does have a way with robotics. He sighed, glancing at his desk. I want you to send a group out now and bring them in. We can't have them ruining this operation, especially with Silver and Violet's failings. Yes, sir, General Gold. Two men saluted and ran out the door. General Gold, Jivo, sighed. He glanced to his desk once more, looking at the picture laying front and center. A family portrait, one that his father, Jero, had given him when he first reached a higher rank in the army. It was supposed to remind him what he was fighting for. At the moment, Jivo wasn't sure if he still knew. As the bike stopped, Raditz looked at the chain link fence separating the two from the entrance of the base. Looks like we're not going to get through the front, Yamcha sighed, his eyes looking towards the barbed wire that adorns the top of the fence. I guess we'll have to find another way. Yamcha had to hop to the side as he wanted Raditz's speed past him, taking a large jump and somersaulting over the top of the fence and landing with his hands spread apart like an Olympic medalist. He turned to look at Yamcha on the other side of the fence, flashing a cocky grin to the other teen. Found a way. Come on, we need to get moving. Yamcha sighed, shaking his head. After a moment, he had gotten enough distance between the fence and himself that he was able to clear it, only to fall into Raditz's arms. Raditz looked at the other with a playful grin, his tail bobbing from side to side. Yamcha sighed again, his face flushing a light pink. You amuse yourself way too easy, Yamcha murmured, though he couldn't hide the slight smile that was forming on his own face. Raditz set the other down and turned towards the base, his eyes flicking towards the entrance. Yamcha stayed close, his own eyes scanning the surroundings. There wasn't any movement around the front of the base, only digging equipment. These tools ranged from shovels and drills all the way to heavy machinery. Yamcha picked up one of the shovels curiously, his head turning towards the desert. While part of the desert still remained untouched, there was another section that was filled with upturned earth. It was clear the base was digging for something, for what Yamcha could only guess was a Dragon Ball. Considering the winds that blow through the desert, it wasn't too odd of a thought that the Dragon Ball could have been covered in sand by now. Still, the sight of the broken desert still showed that whoever was looking for the Dragon Ball didn't hold any fondness for the land being destroyed. "Come on," Raditz spoke, heading in the direction of the gate. "If those jerks aren't out here, then they're probably inside. Just be careful. You can never be too sure about what's inside a place like this." Raditz gave a quick nod, sticking close to the other as the door to the base opened. A low groaning sound of metal rubbing against metal filled the otherwise quiet air. It didn't appear to attract any attention from the inhabitants of the base. Not yet at least. Raditz and Yamcha wandered down corridor after corridor for a while, finding empty rooms or rooms filled with digging material. The base seemed eerily empty, especially for a military base that hypothetically should be filled with recruits roaming the halls. "I don't like the feeling of this," Yamcha murmured, his eyes scanning the ceilings as they walked down yet another hall. "I don't either," Raditz replied, his hands firmly placed in his pockets. After a moment, that instinct proved to ring true. A ringing tone from the intercom filled the otherwise mostly silent hallway, a deep commanding voice following. "You are currently trespassing on Red Ribbon Army property. I assume based on similar reports I've received that this is no accident, and you're after the Dragon Balls." Suddenly doors that were previously closed around the two began to open, each door holding 5 or 6 army members until the hallway was filled. "Unfortunately, I cannot let this happen at my base. I will not tolerate anyone interfering with my mission. This is goodbye." The voice cut off as the soldiers readied themselves for what they thought would be an easy fight. Raditz glared over the crowd, his eyes quickly glancing towards Yamcha. Yamcha sighed, his hands resting behind his head. "Geez, this is seriously a pain. What do you say? You take half and I take half." "All right, we can see who cleans up first," Raditz hummed, preparing his stance for the fight. The soldiers appeared baffled by the confidence of the two, but soon realized that the individual trespassers were not at the same level as the villagers that they were so used to bullying around. Yamcha was quick, landing blows before the footmen could see what was happening. Somehow, Raditz was even quicker, his fists landing punches that could take the breath out of anyone momentarily. Considerably, the fight didn't last that long by the end of everything. Raditz turned to Yamcha, a smirk appearing playfully. "Finished my half first." "No way. I totally finished up my side first." Jivo watched the two argue back and forth over his surveillance camera, though his interests weren't focused on who finished the fight first. His eyes were focused on the tail bobbing back and forth behind Raditz's back. Everything about Raditz during the fight seemed different, otherworldly. Raditz may have been using martial arts to fight, but something about him didn't seem like it belonged on this planet. Jivo stood, pressing a button to open the doors to the lab. The walls held information about speculations about life outside of Earth. While the public was aware that there were some life forms not from this planet, Jivo knew that there must be more further away than anyone was aware about. Before the hunt for the Dragon Balls, this base's purpose was looking into extraterrestrial life forces unknown to the public eye. Jivo moved to a filing cabinet, flipping quickly through different files collected over the years. Eventually his fingers stopped on one file in particular. He slowly pulled the file out, opening it to look at what they had found a few years back. Some years back an empty pod had been found floating in the ocean. Red Ribbon scientists weren't sure what happened to the inhabitant, but were ecstatic for the tech remaining inside. Armor that was both light and difficult to pierce, an odd purple piece of eyewear that still befuddled the scientists for its purpose, and oddly enough, drawings. The drawings were man and depicted strong warriors like men and apes. Behind the men or wrapped around their waist were long bushy tails. Jivo's eyes narrowed. When first found, scientists weren't sure what to do with this information, especially without a body connected to the pod. Now in the base, there was a young warrior-like fighter with an intimidating physique and a tail swinging from left to right. While protecting the Dragon Ball for the army was his prime directive, He sat the file down and looked back towards the security screen. Jivo zoomed in on Raditz and opened a control panel. I'm not going to let a specimen like this get away. Raditz cracked his knuckles, looking at the new batch of fallen soldiers that scattered the base. Despite the army's best effort, each group had been whipped out as effortlessly as the last. Even if the duo had made lengths in their travels, it still felt like the progress moving through the base had been minimal, all things considered. Each corridor, each hall. It all felt like an endless maze that was leading the two to nowhere. Man, this bites, Raditz sighs, his foot nudging an unconscious soldier to the side. The building didn't look that big from the outside. Yamcha sighed, walking next to the taller man, his hands resting inside his pockets. Haven't you noticed? We've been walking downwards. This base probably has a number of different areas buried under the ground. It probably saves on cooling off the entire base when a majority of it doesn't see the sunlight. Raditz nods, looking forward between a new set of choices. 3 doors. He sighed again, looking between the 3 doors. Each door felt like an endless puzzle that he had difficulty solving. Despite his acute sense of smell, several of the smells started to blend together after a certain point. Don't worry about it, Yamcha interjected, his hand pressing against the other's shoulder. The most important thing is getting out of here when we're finished, and I know you'll be able to find a way out. Yeah, Raditz murmured, though he was at least smiling at the confidence placed. Raditz looked between the 3 doors before deciding to walk through the centralmost door. As the door opened, it exposed yet another vast hallway leading to an unknown area of the base. The lights were dim, and the area itself was hard to see clearly in. Yamcha stuck close to the other side, trying to get his eyes to adjust to the lack of light in this particular corridor. Meanwhile, Raditz's eyes scanned the area, taking the lead. Their movement followed the same rhythm they had been following until an acute noise made Raditz stop in his tracks. Raditz? Yamcha tilted his head, looking towards the taller man. Something is different. I hear something close by. It took a moment as the two stood in absolute silence. Yamcha trained his ears to pick up the noise that Raditz had heard before eventually hearing the heavy thuds of something moving closer to the duo. He unconsciously shivered. Whatever was making those sounds was something huge. Eventually, filling the darkness, a bright red color filled the dark hallway from 2 beams ahead of the two. Standing at the mouth of the hallway was something neither teen had ever seen before, at least not like this. The creature standing before them was taller than either of them. Its head was a simple metal oval shape with a few details to mimic the appearance of a head. Its body was a wide steel metal trapezoid with strong flexible steel beams attached at blunt hinges making up its limbs. Its eyes glowed a bright red, bright enough to light the largest of rooms adequately with its eerie color. What struck out to Raditz was how the bright red eyes seemed to match the odd symbol he had frequently seen on the soldiers, branded on the robot's chest. On the creature's chest bore the emblem of the Red Ribbon Army, and the code, RRAH1. Yamcha shivered again, taking a step behind Raditz as the two looked the mechanical creature up and down. Its eyes slowly fell on the pair, its voice ringing out with a mechanical tone. By orders of the Red Ribbon Army and General Gevo, you are to be taken back for immediate study. Compliance is unnecessary. Study. Raditz's brow furrowed, contemplating the meaning of the metal monster's statement. Raditz, move. Yamcha called out, yanking the other teen out of the way of a strong punch. The two gained some distance between themselves and the creature, Yamcha's hand still firmly on the other. Man, it's fast for something so big. Raditz cursed under his breath, glaring at the creature. I'm not taking this. You're going down. Raditz, be careful. It's made of metal, Yamcha warned the other, still positioning himself for incoming attacks. The creature looked back at the two teens, its eyes adjusting and focusing on the 2 different living entities in its vicinity. Its eyes settled on Yamcha before its voice rattled off another statement. Unknown human. Not required for research. Eliminate target. Yamcha's voice squeaked. He wasn't given too much time to consider the implications of that sentiment, with the metal man closing the distance between the two faster than what seemed possible. Yamcha jumped out of the way, a gust of wind blowing in his face from the swing of the metal man's arms. He couldn't stand around and consider the quickness of the attack, considering it was about to attempt to land another blow on the teen. Yamcha jumped back, his eyes searching along the metal man's body. The thick metal would make it nearly impossible to penetrate the creature's vitals, leaving a handful of his martial arts useless. Damn it, think, he cursed softly to himself. As the metal man prepared for another attack, Raditz appeared from the side to send a hard kick to the metal man's side. It was rough enough to momentarily knock over the creature, though he still appeared to be uninjured by the situation. Raditz, on the other hand, stood firmly before kneeling down to hold his foot, slowly murmurs about it being sore and whines following shortly after. The metal man stood back up, looking at the two standing near each other. As it stood there, its eyes scanned the two again, assessing the situation for the most optimal outcome. Yamcha quickly stood by Raditz, glancing down at the other teen. "See, can you use your Sunday attack on him?" Yamcha stuttered out, preparing himself to move from the seemingly invincible metal man. "I'm pretty sure if I did I'd blow both you and me up in the process. I'm better at it, sure, but this is a tiny haul and I'd prefer to keep my first boyfriend for a little longer than a month." Yamcha groaned, trying to think of a plan. The metal man took a step forward, opening its mouth once more. Analysis. Human interfering with the capture of the subject. Adjusting protocol. Adjusting confirmed. The metal man lunged forward faster than before, its fists almost making contact with Yamcha's head, only to be stopped by Raditz grabbing the punch. The taller teen grit his teeth, holding on the fist as the strength only seemed to increase. Yamcha moved, though his eyes focused on the metal joint connecting the robot's arms together. After a moment, the metal man flung Raditz to the side with a sickening thwack against the wall. Yamcha dashed to the side, gaining as much distance as he could gather between him and the metal man. "Raditz, you okay?" the other called out. "Just peachy." Raditz grumbled, sitting up and quickly getting to his feet. "I need you to go for the robot thing's limbs," Yamcha called out. "Like its arms?" Raditz tilted his head, dashing towards the intimidating creature. "Arms, legs, doesn't matter. Aim at the joints, hit it, tear it off, doesn't matter." Raditz nodded, running behind the metal man again and gripped onto one of the arms at the base. He planted his feet against the metal man's hips and grit his teeth. With a swift tug, he was able to rip the arm off the metal man, oil dripping from the limb and exposed wires fraying at the broken piece. "Damage to left arm." Its voice sounded off, its right arm rounding to try and grab hold of Raditz. Raditz attempted to avoid the grasp, only to feel a painful claw vise against him in a death grip. His hands dropped the dismembered robot arm as he's hoisted off the ground. Returning to General Gevo, the metal man's voice sounded off, its body turning around to start walking the opposite direction. "Hey, robot dude." Yamcha ran forward with speed, leaning down swiftly to pick up the disregarded limb. His fists frightened around the appendage, gripping the steel at the base like a bat. As he approached, Yamcha lunged forward, his arms leaning back before swinging the steel beam point blank against the metal man's head. The sound made a sickening boom, like thunder. It was loud enough to sting both Raditz and Yamcha ears. As the beam made contact with the metal head, the force was enough to drive it off the support that connected the head to the torso. Black oil and several wires spazzed out. The grip on the right arm loosened, dropping Raditz to the floor. Both stayed in place, panting as they watched the metal man fall to the floor for good. After a moment, Raditz slowly stood and walked over to lean against Yamcha. "Thanks for that. How'd you know that would kill it?" "Honestly, I was just guessing. I was sort of out of ideas," Yamcha admitted, dropping the steel arm to the ground. "Seriously, what was that thing?" Gevo glared at the screen, watching as the two teens now stood over the defeated body of one of his father's rejected androids. He'd hoped that Android 1 would have been decent enough to at least bring in the strange monkey-tailed boy, but it was too single-task-minded. "Well, you know what they say, if you want something done right, kill them yourself." Gevo walked to the door, grabbing his coat as his boots briskly tapped across the linoleum floor. Raditz sat back against a wall in the hallway. Yamcha sat slightly in front of the taller teenager, inspecting where the metal man had grabbed the other previously. There was slight bruising, but for the most part Raditz had escaped the fight unscathed. Yamcha sighed to himself, hesitantly touching one of the bruises. "Ah, stings," Raditz hissed under his breath, turning his head to the side to hide the growing pout appearing on his face. "Sorry, you look okay I think?" Yamcha ended the sentence as if it were a question. Yamcha ultimately wasn't sure if Raditz was alright. He was pretty sure. Raditz was never not alright from fights before. He and Goku seemed to be invulnerable to most things that would kill a normal person. Yamcha's mind flashed to the moment the metal man's fist almost connected with his head. If the robot succeeded in connecting the punch, Yamcha had no doubt that he would probably be dead. Instead, Raditz stepped in and caught the punch like it was no big deal. It was the same phenomenon of Raditz and Goku being able to take stray bullets without being injured. Yamcha slightly wondered to himself if it had anything to do with the fact that the two brothers could turn into a hulking ape-like creature when the moon was full. Ever since Raditz grew his tail back, he had been naturally quick in a way Yamcha hadn't personally seen in a while. Alright, I think we're ready to move on. Yamcha gave a slight nod, holding his hand out to help Raditz off the ground. Raditz took the other's hand, keeping pace with the other's walk speed as they continued their journey down the hall. After walking for who knows how long, the duo finally entered the last room of this hallway. The lights were off, though the glow of machines was still visible even in the dark. Yamcha felt around for the light switch, eventually lighting up the room. The room was large, cold, and bland color-wise. Machines filled the room, some large, some smaller. Most took the form of supercomputers running information while others were smaller monitoring devices. In the corner, there were different pieces of machinery, most with drills or scoops made for digging holes in the ground. On one of the walls there were freshly pinned papers describing the concept of Dragon Balls and the last location based on frequency. Huh, looks like they're going through a lot of trouble for something that we found in a few months, Raditz hummed, his hands going behind his head. To be fair, you had Bulma's tracker. Hers is way more precise than whatever these guys are using, Yamcha replied, looking around the room. Outside of the corner dedicated to Dragon Balls, he started to notice other things. Odd technology and drawings, schematics, books with strange names on them. Yamcha walked over to one of the schematics, looking over what appeared to be some type of spacecraft. It wasn't anything that he'd seen before. Most transportation, even space transportation, used capsules at this point. Alongside the ship there were drawings of strange-looking men. Aliens weren't uncommon, especially when the king is an anthropomorphic dog. More so Yamcha hadn't actually seen these types of aliens before. Raditz looked over his shoulder, curious at what Yamcha was looking at. What's all of this? I don't know, I haven't seen technology like this before, Yamcha murmured. It looks like there's a lot of stuff like this. Raditz leaned forward, grabbing a schematic hanging to the side. I wonder what? Raditz felt his voice trapped inside his throat. He had barely opened the schematic. It was open enough for him to see something that sent his brain through a spiral. Raditz. Whoa. Hey, let's sit for a second. Yamcha quickly moved behind the other, whose legs started to give, finding a rolling chair to seat the taller teen. What's wrong? Are you feeling okay? Raditz's breathing was too fast, his skin clammy and cold to the touch. He shut his eyes tight trying to center himself, but the only thing happening was a sudden surge of memories washing over. He remembered coming home with new bruises littering his body. The only context he could piece together was that the boy from his dreams had fought him again, and that he remembered one of the adults just telling him to scram. Small tears dripped down his face as he entered the home he'd known. Inside he saw two adults. No, he saw his parents. He saw them for who they were. His mother's face twisted in panic, while his father's face remained stern. Almost too stern, like he was trying to hide his own worry. Bardock, there has to be another way. Jine, I saw what I saw. If I'm wrong, then the worst that happens is that we have to find Kakarot again. Raditz should be out with Prince Vegeta. Mom, Dad? His parents' heads quickly turned in Raditz's direction. Jine's eyes were already filled with tears, her hand covering her mouth. Bardock's stern gaze grew more stern than Raditz had ever seen before. What are you doing home? You're supposed to be on a mission. His voice was cold. At least it sounded cold at the moment. Even in the recollection, the proper way to describe it was panicked. I'm sorry. Raditz stuttered out. They said I would just slow them down, so they sent me back home, Mom? In a swift movement, Jine rushed over to Raditz, his mother's embrace holding him tight. Slowly soft sobs started to escape her throat. Raditz was confused, his eyes welling up with tears too. What's wrong? Why is everyone upset? We don't have time. I can make adjustments. Jine, take Raditz and grab Kakarot. Bardock's voice was firm again, his pace quickened. Jine picked up Raditz, roughly wiping away tears as she took a deep breath. Everything will be okay, I promise. Let's get your brother and meet with Papa, okay? Everything was a blur. Suddenly Goku was also in their mother's arms, but he wasn't being called Goku. Jine hurried to meet with Bardock, the older man moving to meet his family. Raditz, listen to me, his voice low, stern, yet somehow warmer than Raditz had ever heard before. You're 6 now. Old enough to go on missions, and right now we need you to do something important for you and Kakarot. Important? Raditz's voice cracked slightly, his eyes wide as he looked at both of his parents. His mother was about to cry again as Bardock began to kneel down to look at his son. Very important, you and Kakarot are going to go somewhere for a little bit. Your brother is strong but he's still too little to fend for himself. We need you to look after him. Go. But where, aren't you or Mom coming? Raditz's voice wobbled slightly. We can't. There isn't enough room. If everything is a false alarm, we'll come and get you as soon as possible. False alarm for what? I don't understand. Jine leaned down as well, hugging Raditz tight. Her voice quivered as she whispered. We love you both so much, please take care of each other. I'll see you as soon as possible. Raditz felt tears welling in his eyes. The way they were talking just confirmed that something bad was happening and that he wouldn't be seeing his parents for a long time. Considering what he knows now, he'd never see them ever again. Tears almost escaped his eyes, only for a firm hand to gently be placed on top of his head. It was calloused, but warm. He tilted his head up to Bardock, his chest jumping at the sight. His father was smiling at him. I'm proud of you. It was 4 simple words, yet it was everything. Raditz knew it was everything, considering his father wasn't as savvy with emotions. Raditz could only take a deep breath and nod his head. Goku was placed in his arms and he held him tight. Raditz felt himself lifted and placed inside a snug space. It's going to be a tight squeeze, but it should be enough room to get you two away. Raditz watched as the door closed, his parents on the other side, his mother vowing to come and find them again. His body shook, as the spacecraft started to move. The last thing he remembered seeing was the sight of his parents getting smaller and smaller, a red planet taking the form in the distance. He and Goku were flying away from everything Raditz had ever known. Stuck in an overly cramped spacepod. Raditz! Raditz! Yamcha's voice called out, his hands on the other's shoulders. Yamcha looked around, glancing back to the schematic. He wasn't sure why a spacepod had gotten this reaction, but Raditz was in some sort of state of shock. What's going on today? Yamcha looked around, seeing if there was anything he could use to help snap Raditz out of it. After a moment, he heard the sharp clicking of someone approaching the lab. His breath hitched, looking back to Raditz. He wasn't in any shape to fight and there weren't many places to hide. After a moment, the footsteps stopped, and a large silhouette loomed in the doorway of the lab. Shit. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and now we will see you in the next video.